United States are predicted to lose money in the 2026 crop year. Markets are a mess, input and equipment are up, trade deals are strained. So how do we decide what to farm on a year like this? How do we make decisions when none of them will make money? Today we're going to walk through how I, as a farmer here in Kentucky, decide what am I going to plant in 2026 and how are we going to survive. So what went well in 2025? What we've seen here over the last 4 or 5 seasons is that extremely early beans seem to be able to yield ahead of the drought. So it seems like more and more we're getting mid to late season droughts here in Kentucky, and the late or double crop soybeans or later soybeans have been suffering through that drought and yields being lowered. So what we've seen is a trend of early planted soybeans, and I'm talking really early, March or before April 20th, so late March, early April, those beans are significantly out yielding double crop or late planted acres. So definitely one of the great things for us about 2025 was the early bean crop. And that's a trend, a 5-year trend or longer. From what we've seen, beans planted before the summer solstice just yield better. We don't really know how to explain it other than they just have longer photo periods. So they're receiving more sunlight, and because of that sunlight, they're better. Another great thing for us in 2025 was our corn yields. So our corn yields have consistently been getting better year after year for the last several years. We seem to have kind of hit a yield plateau, but it's a high plateau for yields. So corn yields have definitely been a plus. So another positive thing about 2025 was our corn yields here in Kentucky, or on my side of Kentucky. We had enough rain early to make a really good corn crop. Our corn was mostly made before the drought had set in, and so for us, our 2025 corn crop was a benefit. So when we're harvesting, we try to harvest right around 30,000 bushels a day, and that's kind of like a goal for us. That's what we like to see come out of the fields. In January is one of our busier hauling months. It's just because we don't have a lot of field operations going on, and so we're kind of low on help right now, but we all try to make 3 to 5 loads a day a piece. So 3 or 4 trucks running, 3 to 5 loads a piece a day. So in the fall of 2024, we planted a canola crop and harvested it in the spring of 2025. I decided in 2025 fall not to plant a canola crop. The reasons I didn't plant it were we had significantly higher by $1 or so the price of canola. So I think in 2025 it was around $12.20, $12.30, something like that was our contract price. I barely broke even with it. I may have made it a little bit of money in 2025 with canola, but not a significant amount. Get into 2025 fall and price of canola has lowered to $11.20 or so, maybe lower than that. And just based upon my history of it in 2025, I felt like we were going to be significantly below break even. And not that we're not going to be that way in the corn or soybean arena as well, but I just felt like I'm a lot more comfortable in the corn and soybean acre than I am in canola. I don't know much about it. The harvest cost is significantly higher than it is in wheat, and just for those factors, I decided to grow wheat again as my spring crop, even though wheat is pretty significantly below break even as well. Yeah, so you heard some of the positives. There are always got to be negatives. So probably my biggest negatives in 2025 were quality of the wheat. That continues to be a problem here in Kentucky. It seems like each and every year for the last several, about the time our wheat comes off, we start getting inundated with humongous rainstorm after rainstorm, and that was another problem in 2025. The amount of rainfall that we received in May and June was just, we were unable to overcome it, and it gave us a really low quality for our wheat. And if you know anything about a wheat crop, a low quality wheat in an already suppressed commodity market makes for a big loser. And that was probably our most detrimental part of 2025 was the amount of quality dock we took on our wheat. In a normal crop year, we would normally have around a quarter of our acres in wheat to be harvested in that spring season. We backed off our wheat acres just because we're so far below break even with the amount of rainfall we've been receiving, the quality docks that we're getting. It's very difficult to raise wheat profitable. And so we just looked at it and said the risk outweighs the benefits. And we significantly reduced our wheat crop for 2026. Really too early to tell how good the wheat is going to be. It did get off to a really good start, so wheat looked beautiful growing off. It's got a really good stand. It's clean. There's not a lot of weeds in it. And so we have all the factors in place to have a good wheat crop, but so much of the wheat yield is determined in May and June. We won't really know what we have until then. So the second negative that I have for 2025 is also kind of part of wheat, but it's also part of some of our lower ground here in West Kentucky. It's very difficult to get on when it's wet. And so that forced us a lot of our soybeans either into the double crop situation, which were after wheat, or because of their low-lying status, it made us plant the crop very late. And with that, those soybean acres fell directly inside of a major drought with a lot of heat, and it just burnt those crops up. So with soybeans already being unprofitable at good yield levels, when your yield levels are significantly reduced due to drought, it just made for a very difficult season for soybeans. So bad wheat year, overall bad soybean year here in Kentucky, with super low commodity prices, pretty difficult to farm in 2026. We always start out by trying to plant soybeans. So we'll get into March. If we've got really good weather and good soil conditions, we'll push as hard as we can to get as many acres inside of that last couple of weeks of March as we can get. And then we'll try to get the soybeans planted. And a lot of this is dictated by weather, but we would like to see them all planted except the double crop by April 20th. That's kind of our goal. Now, whether we get that done or not remains to be seen. More than likely, most years weather will interfere with our plans, but that's our goal, is to get all our soybeans planted by April 20th. Corn, a lot like soybeans, we won't plant quite as early. Corn is a little less forgiving, needs a little bit warmer ground temperature, but we've consistently seen that our best corn yields come between the 12th of April and the 25th. So the bulk of our crop, we'll plant a little ahead of those dates, maybe a little after those dates, just to spread our risk, but we'll want the bulk of our crop planted in that time period. So when that time period hit, it's all hands on deck to keep the corn planter going and running as efficiently as possible. So combine logistics are always an issue. We got a lot of acres to get over and just one machine to get over it. And as you can see, we have our first breakdown for 2026 already 20 days in. Yeah, it says good year. Is it going to be a good year? I don't know. So in 2026, spraying usually starts our season out. Of course, we're hauling grain early to be able to relieve some of the later hauling logistics when we get more busy in the field. But spraying starts really early here in Kentucky. We'll be applying wheat. We always say in Kentucky, usually around the farm show. So in the state of Kentucky, the National Farm Machinery Show is our largest agriculture event here in the state. The state fair would be a rival to it, but it's not as big as the farm show, and it's not as known nationally. So our farm show usually happens the second week of February, and a lot of times here in western and central Kentucky, the sprayers are in the field putting the first shots of nitrogen on the wheat. So what we're looking to do in that time period is just give the wheat a kick start. It's starting to come. We're starting to get a few warm days mixed with some cooler temperatures, and it begins to bring the wheat out of dormancy and actively begins to let it grow. Usually within a couple of weeks of that, people are spraying their Harmony, and Harmony is a herbicide that just eliminates garlic and onions from the field. And you've heard me say this before, nobody wants onions in their crackers or their bread, and that's what we're trying to do. Harmony is just removing that garlic, wild onion from the field, preventing that from getting into the grain. And then after the Harmony sprayed on the wheat, a lot of people were beginning to make the first burn down pass or herbicide application in their corn and soybean fields. And basically what they're doing is they're cleaning the field up from noxious weeds and getting it ready for the spring corn or soybean crop. You know, and then by March or April, we've have emerging plants, and once the plants are emerging, it's a constant battle against weeds. You're going to continually have weed pressure in the field, and the sprayer, you know, every few weeks has to make another pass on that acre to prevent yield loss from weeds in your crop. So I think there's a couple of trains of thought about what to plant in 2026. You have certain guys that are saying, well, you're going to lose money in all crops, so what is the least risky crop to grow? And I think a lot of people think, well, it costs the least to plant soybeans, and so we'll plant soybeans to reduce our input costs and hopefully lose the least amount of money possible. Versus there's a train of thought that thinks, well, soybeans are already going to be produced at a larger scale than normal. That's going to adversely affect prices just because there's going to be more acres in soybeans than normal. So a lot of your cotton and rice producers, because of the high input cost of those commodities, they're going to transition their operations to soybeans. So you're going to have more soybeans growing. The price of the soybean is going to have added pressure on it because of that added supply. And in my mind, you want to avoid that situation where you're already at a suppressed commodity price, and it's even more suppressed because of the amount of acres of the certain commodity, in this case soybeans, being out there in the field. I think there's something to be said this season about world corn stocks. So we're really close to a level that will support prices, and so I feel like we have more of a chance to have a weather issue, and it didn't happen in 2025. Most of the time we get a weather issue of some type that's significant enough to push corn prices up high enough to get them to a profitable level. That never happened in 2025, but we're at a slightly lower carry out in the world in 2026 than we were in 2025. And in my mind, that gives us a potential of a scenario where we come in here either in South America with their safrinha crop or in America with our spring crop, that we have a situation where it looks like the crop is going to be reduced, and that puts enough risk in the market to maybe give us some pricing opportunities. That's yet to be seen. We may see another year in 2026 where there is no pricing opportunities to price above a break even. We hope not, but that's definitely a risk that we're taking. That's our rough plan for 2026. Is it going to succeed? Is it going to fail? Who knows? But thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe.
right. I think we're officially live. Don't look at the screen. Look at me. Welcome to Atlas Ag News, presented by Atlas Media. Atlas Media is your go-to for high-quality media marketing material in the agriculture industry. My name's Clayton.
And I'm Neil.
And we are your hosts of this inaugural live show, whatever we're going to call this. Currently, we've titled it Atlas Ag News, but who knows what it could turn into.
Yeah, I like that name. Lots to cover today. Let's jump right in.
Before that, did you bring anything to drink?
I do. I got water.
Because I brought a bunch of milk. My goal today is going to be to try to finish this whole thing so that way you can return this glass bottle tomorrow so I can get my deposit back.
How would I ever have guessed you were going to drink milk?
It's kind of the only thing I ever talk about on my social media is how great milk is. So, all right. So we'll get right into the news topics. We'll get to the fun stuff after that. Let's talk about the U.S. farm decline. Spencer Langford with Pro Farmer reports that the number of U.S. farms shrank by 15,000 in 2025, bringing the total to 1.86 million farms total, said Friday in its Land and Farms report. That's the USDA. This continues a long-lasting trend of declining farm numbers, and analysis from the American Farm Bureau noted that the farm bankruptcies were also on the rise. The largest decline at the state level was Texas, which lost 2,000 operations. No state saw an increase of farms, but multiple states did indicate no change from the prior year.
That's unbelievable with Texas.
I know. I'd be curious to understand why it's Texas. If anybody's from Texas watching, let us know. Yeah.
You know, it's that area has been experiencing severe drought in the West, and I'm assuming that has taken a toll on the producers out there.
Mm-hmm. Now it's your turn to read, Neil. That's why we have these notes. The blues you remember.
Yeah, I got you. AgWeb's Tyne Morgan reported that the U.S. ag economy enters 2026 in a clear crop sector recession. But the deeper crisis is one of confidence. I can say that that's true. High input cost, weak prices, policy uncertainty, and eroding trust in data have pushed many producers from planning for profitability into fighting for survival. Economists largely view the downturn as cyclical and manageable through optimization, while farmers experience it as structural stress on their operations and livelihoods. I think most everybody's feeling that stress. Mm-hmm. On the state of the economy itself, there's little debate. 76% of economists say the U.S. crop sector is in a recession. 74% of producers agree. More than 76% of economists believe conditions are worse than a year ago. I can buy into that. That's definitely true. Input prices are way up. Mm-hmm. Tyne reported, economists warn this environment is accelerating consolidation, with 72% expecting low prices and high costs to push weaker operations out of the market, with 80% of retailers saying it will increase consolidation in the industry. And looking at Texas there with 2,000 less operations, that's certainly consolidation.
Mm-hmm. So the question that we have got to ask ourselves is it really as bad as the news says it is, and where are we going to go from here? Last year, I'd probably say 6 months ago, I would have said it's not as bad as the news is making it out to be. But I think as 2025 data is starting to roll in, and I talk to more and more producers and more companies that are working with producers, like the amount of either no pay or no deposits down are, from all the companies I've talked to, are like 50% higher than they used to be.
Yeah, I want to say clearly here in Kentucky that 2024 was a lot better year. Our crop in Kentucky was better in 2024 than in 2025, and input prices were, not substantially lower, but enough lower that it didn't put a, undue burden on the Kentucky producers with the good crop that we had. In 2025, you have, you had input cost higher with a worse crop. And because of those circumstances, and I continue to say inflation's a big part of that. The cost of doing business is just higher because of that. It just is putting stress on the producer.
Yeah, I used to think it was just input companies charging out the wazoo, which I do think they are probably charging more than they used to. I think Nutrien reported one of their most profitable quarters ever last fall, which is crazy given that But from people I'm talking to in the ag retail space, there are a lot of like even the retailers are saying, yeah, all of our suppliers are also jacking up prices right now, and it's all slowly trickling down to the farmer, and the farmer is always the one who's at the end of the stick, who's like, oh, I just have to put up with everyone's increase in prices and them still trying to get their profit margins.
Yeah, I think the ag retailers are definitely suffering too, though. I mean, along with the farmers, as farmers are tightening their budget, spending less, and really watching where they're spending their dollars, it's putting the strain on ag retailers. Um, Especially, labor is continuing to increase, and a lot of those ag retailers are large employers because of that. Just an added burden, tightening budgets, higher labor. Just all around bad farm economy currently.
Yeah. So what let's get on it. Let's loosen up a little bit. What scares us most about the future and what's our greatest fear? My biggest fear is that we're going to see a swing back up in crop prices, and structurally we're not going to change anything, and this is going to happen again one day. Like, I feel like I'm sure there will come a day when crop prices are higher. I think we are going to lose more operations. I think consolidation's for sure going to continue. The way our current ag economy works, I think, is a scale game. You just have to scale to be able to survive right now. And my fear is that most producers aren't the ones who do make it through won't take enough note and say, hey, I need to protect myself from this downturn in the future.
Yeah, I think my biggest fear, just speaking from off the top of my head, is I continue to believe, like I said, inflation is a continuing problem. I can't see it getting better in the near term. I continue to hear that they talk about quantitative easing, lower interest rates would benefit the farms in some fashion, but I just believe that the cost of goods will continue to increase as inflation does. Also, what scares me is, we're not the low cost producer, and it's almost impossible in a developed market that the United States is to be the low cost producer. Because of that, we're going to see continued increased pressure from South American producers, and I tend to think that although we'll probably see some, the ag economy is always cyclical because of the developed market we're operating in, interest and those South American producers. It's gonna be a long-term struggle here in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was on Farm Progress. It might have been Pro Farmer. I was researching earlier, but in the U.S., we are year over year losing farmland. The development isn't as bad as the numbers say, or at least people online say, obviously land is being developed and we are losing farmland. It's not like a massive percentage, but it's more than Brazil, because Brazil keeps gaining farmland every year rather than losing it. And so as we continue to lose farmland and they continue to gain farmland, unless you're operating at massive scale, like there's just, I don't see a way forward in the U.S. ag economy without figuring out how to either scale, have absolutely no cost to actually growing it, or developing something else like a niche crop or some sort of value-added commodity crop, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I agree with value-added and diversify. I think diversity was key in the early ag economy. When we had a developing market here in the U.S., everybody kind of went away from the diversity, and I feel like to be profitable in the next 20 years, we're going to have to re-diversify into animal agriculture. If you've been in row crops, you need to diversify to animals as well, and if you've only been in animals, you need to diversify to row crops. So bringing both on board your farm so you can spread your income between multiple ag products, I think is going to be key for the success of the future U.S. producer. I got a question on there. It says, what's your strategy for protecting margins this year? What I've been working on the last couple of weeks is really taking a hard look at every farm that I farm and making sure that the farms that I have been farming have been profitable for me, and if they're not, considering cuttings back. And I know scaling is going to be key if we continue this low margin game, but I personally don't want to scale anymore. I'm happy with the size I want to be, and I think you know, it it's already a grind, and just it's daunting to think about adding more acres in a time when you're already experiencing financial stress and burden just from the overall downturn in the economy.
Do you think, say, a couple 100-acre producer could eke out a living as ag is now and continue to live off of it if they had owned equipment, older equipment, they did most of the labor themselves, and were able to do a low input strategy? Because I think where it starts to break down for most guys is that when you grow and you scale, you get the benefits of the economies of scale, whereas instead of having to have two mid-sized combines, you go to a large combine that might be lower hour, or you can negotiate better pricing on all the inputs you're buying, your seed, things like that the small producers have less leverage doing. But we also get to the point where if everyone's scaled, then everyone's scaled and everyone has the same pricing, right?
Yeah.
Is there a world where that 500-acre guy can continue to eke out a living without owned land?
Sure. I can, without owning land?
Without owning land.
Okay. I say if you're a 500-acre producer and you own your land and you own your equipment, I continue to believe that is the most efficient and best way to earn a living as a farmer. In economies of scale, I think you have to be ultra large, like 30,000 or so, to really benefit off economies of scale. I can, like a 3,000 or 4,000 acre farmer and a 10,000 acre farmer are going to be able to purchase inputs very similarly. There's not a lot of you're not going to see a lot of benefit from being at 10,000 than you are at 4. So, in my train of thought, the best way to make money if you're going to scale in the farming operation is getting at a point where you're maximizing your equipment. You're not stressing yourself out with too much equipment to farm the acres that you farm. Because every time you add a combine, you're adding such a burden to the operation, or a sprayer, or a large tractor, and a planter. You just go right down the line. All these pieces are so expensive. So you have to get to a point where the equipment that you have is being utilized to its max capacity to be the most efficient in your operation. And so, that's why I hear a lot of retailers say the 2,000 acre farmer is kind of the sweet spot, because you can have one combine, you can have one planter, 1 or 2 tractors, and you don't have to have an off-farm job. That farm provides enough income for you. You don't have to have a lot of. You might need an employee or 2, but you don't have to have a lot of employees to run your operation. Yeah. As you add labor, it begins to strain the farm's ability to produce enough to provide for all the families on the farm.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing in the larger economy as well as the ag economy, I do see the middle class getting squeezed. I think the same applies to the farm economy, as we're seeing the middle class slowly get squeezed out. So RWK said John Deere's stock ripped today, cooking the books. We're going to talk about that later. We actually have Deere's quarterly report in our notes today, and I do think it's something we should talk about, and the future of ag and how John Deere's long-term plays are going to possibly negate what goes on in the cyclical cycle. Because you're right, John Deere did have like a super high stock price today.
Do you want to talk about John Deere right now, or you want to wait?
Let's save it for later. Okay. We have a whole equipment section coming up.
Alrighty.
Yeah, we have more on the U.S. farm decline coming on later. So let's talk about the Farm Bill. Mike Pearson with Farm Progress reports House Agriculture Committee Chairman Glenn G.T. Thompson of Pennsylvania unveiled his latest Farm Bill proposal on Friday, marking another attempt to address legislation that's now 8 years overdue. The 802-page Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026 represents what some are calling a skinny farm bill, since Congress already tackled major provisions like crop insurance subsidies in last summer's One Big Beautiful Bill. Thompson emphasized that a new farm bill is long overdue and represents, it definitely is long overdue,
2018,
an important step forward in providing certainty to farmers, ranchers, and rural communities. The House Ag Committee is scheduled to begin discussions on February 23rd. Would that be Monday? I think that's Monday.
Yeah, the last Farm Bill, 2018, and we've been through COVID since then, and there's so many circumstances have changed since COVID.
100%.
Inflation.
All right, what's in this bill?
Okay. Key provisions include disaster assistance expansion, So enhanced tree assistance programs for orchards and addition of plant pests to natural disaster definitions. Specialty crop support, consistent framework for USDA disaster aid across different administrations. State block grants, standing authority for ad hoc disaster relief through state distributed funds. Increase loan limits, guaranteed operating loans raised to $3 million and ownership loans to $3.5 million. Storage solutions, expanded low-cost financing options for on-farm storage facilities. That's one of their best programs, actually. Dairy risk management, adjusted promotion expense calculation for better risk management and shutdown protection. Ensures farmers maintain access to marketing assistant loans during government shutdowns, which was a problem on this last shutdown, right when farmers needed money.
Yeah. Shout out to Mike Pearson and the Farm Progress team for putting this article together. We will have all the sources linked when this full episode goes live. So if you guys want to look at the doc and see where we got all this info, I did not write this all myself. So just to be clear, Mike Pearson at Farm Progress spoke on this, and then it was typed up into an article. So the bill is still facing a lot of opposition within the government, as the Farm Bill always seems to. There's still a large portion of I believe actually the Republicans are pushing back on this a little too. But regardless, as usual, the Farm Bill is continuing just to get stalled over and over again. So the question I have is, do we actually think it's going to get through, or we think it's going to keep getting stalled? Because we keep getting all these like bridge programs like over and over of like, well, let's just, tack it on to some other bill over and over. Like, we had COVID. We had multiple other COVID packages. We had the Big Beautiful Bill last year. So we've had a bunch of other like supplemental things outside of the Farm Bill that have kept programs running. Do we think it's actually going to happen, or do we think it's going to get stalled again? I'd like to hear your perspective, because you do spend some time in D.C. and you've worked on the lobbying side of things a little. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I really think it's going to be a struggle to pass another Farm Bill. I mean, there's multiple reasons, but Washington's so dysfunctional, and I mean that's semi a good thing, because when nothing happens in Washington, there's gridlock, and so no added regulations can be brought up on top of us. It keeps us from taxes from increasing, so there is some positive to gridlock in Washington. The problem is the polarization between the two parties. The Democrats, they want to expand the food programs, and anytime you talk about maybe cutting them, it's a non-starter. On the other side, Republicans, they just want to cut everything, and I think the Democrats could get on board with spending and increasing support for farmers if the Republicans would agree to not touch the safety net for the American people that need it, and I think both, there's an argument to be had that both programs are needed at some level. Both of them are probably too bloated.
You're telling me the government spends too much money on everything?
Well, the government definitely spends too much money on everything, and that's why we're in this inflationary struggle that we're all in. That's why we all go to the grocery and we're spending $380 for a family of 4 for 5 days or whatever.
Honestly, I was shocked how much this milk costs, in terms of it really wasn't that expensive compared to mass produced milk. This was probably $5 with the deposit for this little thing, which for the fact that I can go to that dairy in 15 minutes, I think is pretty impressive. But yeah, grocery store prices across the board. I was even love the grocery store, but even yesterday it was super expensive just looking for anything there. I do think, do we think the Farm Bill is actually going to be of any benefit to producers at this rate?
I think if we could get a new Farm Bill across the finish line, it would definitely benefit producers, especially in the short term. I mean, they've just been under such a strain nationwide. Weather has been so wacky. The commodity prices have been down for so long. Input prices are just bloated. And there is so much data to be had by those large corporations that farmers, that they're busy getting their crops out, hauling their grain, doing all the things, and they just don't get to analyze data like a large corporation would. I mean, they can literally hire analysts to just pore over data, and they know exactly where to keep their margins to take the maximum pain that they can take without bankrupting the farmer. You know,
Yeah.
but
It's like every time a payment comes out, every single input price
Sure.
seems to just slowly match. And, we have gotten to that point where it is, as long as the producer can eke out a 0.5% or up to 3% profit margin, everyone's happy. But the moment it gets any higher than that and people start talking, like, no one likes to admit that farmers can make money, and it does happen sometimes. But the input side of things and all these companies, like, there is such a clear graph of every time farmers seem to have money or things get good, everything seems to go up in price.
yeah, I mean, you see phosphorus and urea creeping up here in the last few days because of, because they know that payment's coming in a week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, I think I'll have to find the article, but like even like Nutrien, I think Nutrien has some allegations against them in the Canada government of colluding with some other manufacturers to corner the reserves on several minerals because they know, hey, like if we can all set the prices and keep things all happy, yeah, it's a whole thing. We won't get too far into conspiracy, but yeah. The Farm Bill, I don't really have any hope for it. It's going to get some sort of provision will get added onto it, but yeah.
We have a subscriber here that says he gets is that $1.28 a pound for pecans, but the grocery sells them for $10 a pound. You got to go direct to consumer with a super nice product like that.
I don't even know if direct consumers are. Well, I think it's processing. Like anytime you talk to, if you study all of history, you study any business, the people always making the most money will be the middlemen. You don't have to be the guy at the end. You don't have to be the grocery store, and you don't have to be the farmer. But if you are the processor and the packer in between, that's where you can really get those profit margins. Because grocery store profit margins, I think, are anywhere from like the 5 to 7%. Producer side, 5% to 10% if you're having a good year. But the middlemen, I mean, that's where you start making that 20 to 30% profit margin, like that. Buying pecans from you at $1.28 and then being able to sell them at the grocery store for $10. Well, they sold them to the grocery store for like $9 probably.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother conversation for another day. While we're talking about people stealing money from farmers, let's jump into the cattle business. Do you know about the Agridime situation?
No, I don't.
So I did a video on this on the YouTube channel. Oh, it was probably 2 years ago now, but there was a Ponzi scheme that happened, up to $220 million. And this would have been, I think, in 2020. I'm just going to share the article here and we'll read through it together because I think it's just a funny story of, yeah, be careful who you give your money to. Let's see, does this work? Okay. This is Ag Daily. 5 indicted in $220 million cattle contract fraud scheme. 5 individuals have been federally indicted on accusations of having roles in a $220 million nationwide fraud scheme involving purported cattle purchase contracts, according to an announcement from United States Attorney for the Northern District of Texas, Ryan Raybould. A Fort Worth federal grand jury returned the indictment on February 11th, 2026. Those charged are Jed Wood of Fort Worth, Texas, who faces 3 counts of wire fraud. Josh Link of Stafford, Missouri, I have a story on Josh in a second, who faces 10 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and 2 counts of money laundering. A couple more things. Tia Link, Taylor Bang, Ryan Thomas. Thousands of unwitting investors, ranchers, and others in the cattle industry nationwide were drawn in and victimized by the defendant's multi-million-dollar scheme alleged in this indictment. Federal prosecutors allege that from 2021 through December 2023, the 5 defendants acting through Agridime falsely represented individual cattle purchasers, cattle ranchers, and feedlots. The Agridime would use their funds to purchase specific cattle for each victim, raise the cattle, and eventually sell the meat for the same specific individual cattle for profit. In reality, the indictment charges the defendants did not use victim funds as promised and instead used newer cattle purchase funds to pay Agridime. Classic Ponzi scheme. Operating expenses pay funds owed by Agridime to earlier cattle purchasers, pay for personal expenses, and purchase real estate. Authorities allege the defendants fraudulently collected more than $220 million from 2,200 victims across the United States through false statements made in the public and private advertising. The defendants allegedly used false promises to lure prospective clients into their scheme and then misappropriated clients' funds to enrich themselves. One individual, Josh Link, remains a fugitive. We are asking the public to contact the FBI if they have any information regarding Link's location, said FBI Dallas Special Agent in charge, R. Rosef Rothak. So, yeah, that's the big story. So I don't know if I told you this. So Josh Link is friends with a bunch of us on LinkedIn. You know, there's a pretty small agriculture community on LinkedIn, and he went after a couple people when they started calling him out on this. Like once the stuff was starting to come out a few years ago, and he went on this like tirade against everyone. He was just cursing everyone out, saying, "I'll prove you wrong. I'll prove you wrong." He sent me DMs with a bunch of curse words. He sent my friend Cassidy a
Wow.
bunch of DMs, like this whole thing. And here we are in 2026, and he is on the FBI's most wanted list for a Ponzi scheme. Isn't that funny?
That is crazy.
I was actually talking to someone about that on LinkedIn earlier. This is like a tale as old as time in the cattle industry of like, oh, we'll buy your cattle and then we'll sell it and we'll pay you this and all these things. And like, apparently Ponzi schemes are super common in cattle. I don't spend enough time in the cow industry to understand that, but I just thought that was a funny story that we should talk about. That came out last week, and I just chuckled a little bit. So, yeah. How about you take the next one?
Okay. The funding comes after widespread forage loss, pasture damage, and herd disruptions across multiple
Wait, go
regions.
back up. Just read the whole.
Oh,
whole
read
thing.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. It says cattle guys are finally getting some money. Ag Daily reports the U.S. Department of Agriculture has issued the final round of emergency livestock relief program payments, delivering more than $1.89 billion to producers impacted by drought, floods, and wildfires in 23 and 24. Announced recently by the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins, the payments mark the completion of relief authorized under the American Relief Act of 2025, which provided $2 billion in emergency assistance for livestock producers suffering from weather-related losses. Livestock operations across the country were disrupted in 23 and 24 by catastrophic floods, drought, and wildfires, and poor forage conditions, Rollins said in a statement. We're working every day to ensure America's food supply remains safe, stable, and secure. The funding comes after widespread forage losses, pasture damage, and herd disruptions across multiple regions during back-to-back years of extreme weather. By fully allocating the remaining funds, USDA says it's ensuring producers receive the maximum support possible under congressional authorization. For many livestock operations facing high input cost and lingering drought impacts, the final payments may provide critical cash flow support heading into 2026 production decisions.
Yeah, I hear a lot from cattle guys on the internet that the row crop guys have it so easy because of federal crop insurance and all the payments and everything. And I was just like, oh, the cattle guys finally got some money for things that happened like 3 years ago. But
they definitely deserve it. I mean, they've faced 10 years of tough times before this last couple of year run on cattle.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like it's been good for a lot of guys the past like year and a half, but even then, like most guys will tell you now, it's like, yeah, the same thing's happening to them that's happening to the row crop industry. Is inflation's just going up, everything's getting more expensive for them. So, yeah, anytime someone says that row cropping's harder than working cows, I just am like, you know what, you don't have to do all winter. Feed a combine. You do not have to feed a combine all winter. You don't have to feed your tractor all winter. You do have to go out and feed cows every single day.
And bust to icing.
Yeah, and so I just,
I don't think the cow calf guys can really benefit from these high cattle prices, but the feeders, man, they're in a tough spot.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot, and there's guys still making money. And the thing about the feed lot that I've learned more in the past few years, it's a lot more like having a grain bin than we like to think. Like, you have kind of more of that marketing power than you would if you were, a cow-calf guy, because you're like, well, at some certain age, they have to get shipped off. I can't keep them anymore. Whereas the guys with the lot, they can kind of do the math of like, I can keep feeding them, keep them a little longer if I secure this price, do all that. So it's not great for them. Overall, I still think someone was telling me the other day that the Packers are getting screwed and it's so bad. I'm like, the Packers are fine. They'll be fine. They just will, we'll all pay for it later.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah. But anytime someone's like, oh, row crop's harder than ranching, I'm like, no, it's not, guys. Like, it is way harder. Like, there's a reason you don't meet cowboys over 60. And there's a reason that row crop guys are still getting in their combine when they're 85 years old. There are fires all over the high plains right now. AgWeb reports high fire danger continues after wildfires swept across western Oklahoma, southwest Kansas, and the Texas Panhandle on Tuesday, forcing numerous evacuations. High wind gusts and low humidity Thursday caused more threats for fire danger. The message to those in the red flag warning areas: do not burn, and if you see smoke, report it. More than 300,000 acres have burned across Oklahoma. What else? 12,000 acres somewhere else in Oklahoma. Let me just share my screen again. Like, let's look at.
I saw a fire that they had on the news the other night. You could see that thing from space.
It's crazy. Like 100,000 acres is a lot of acres,
It
but
is.
you've probably seen the videos if you're on ag social media of the guys and their tractors, pulling some form of tillage, probably their disc around, just trying to stop these fires. These are some photos from Facebook, but it's all over. It's crazy stuff out there, and it's weird this time of year. But it's just been such a dry winter in so many parts of the country that I've even seen stuff in Montana. There's places catching fire in Montana that didn't have snow, and so yeah, crazy stuff. Let's see. I think we got some videos. Let's watch this video. Look at that. Just a guy in his tractor. Could you imagine that? Gosh, imagine being in your tractor just having to. Oh,
Yeah, no, thank you.
yeah, cool story to tell your kids. But, yeah, once again, guys, that this show is brought to you by Atlas Media. We don't have any sponsors that make this happen. The thing that makes this happen is our production company that Neil and I own. So if you have any need for high quality photo video within the ag industry, get a hold of us. Give us a call. You can find my phone number and my email on our website. You can get a hold of Neil. You can get a hold of me. If you know someone who needs media, get a hold of us. That's how we make this all happen for you guys. Appreciate it. All right. You want to talk about equipment now?
We can. We got a comment there. It says we are dry in southwest Arkansas, pretty bad. So
Do you guys get fires down there in Arkansas?
same here in Western Kentucky. I mean, we did have that snow 3 weeks ago, but really haven't seen a substantial rainfall since.
How often do you guys have forest fires around here? I saw the Smokey the Bear sign in Iowa the other day, and I was like, we don't get fires in Iowa. That's not really a thing we get.
We get rain here most of the time. We just, we don't really have a lot of fire danger here. Not that it can't happen. It's a very small risk.
Yeah. You guys don't have, there's not that much grass in the winter that burn either.
No.
And you don't have enough dense forests. You probably aren't worrying about
The
that.
forests are gone. We've cleared them all.
Yeah. All right. Now to everyone's favorite topic, equipment. Kubota is entering the square baler market, specifically with a double square baler. At the Successful Farming Reports by Kurt Bennick, at the National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville, Kentucky, Kubota announced it is entering the small square baler market with a SSB series high capacity machine that features a dual chamber design with a single row output. As the crop enters the machine, an intake rotor separates the windrow into two separate stuffer chutes, each feeding alternating plungers that form bales into two separate bale chambers with independent nodder systems. By producing two bales simultaneously, field time can be cut in half compared to conventional balers. The bale ramps on the SSB balers align the dual chamber into a single row of bales. This differentiates the SSB from the other double balers that produce two rows of bales from a single row, streamlining the collection. What else we got in here? Yep, it's dry here in Virginia. We had snow, but we're still dry from past summer. Yeah, it's dry everywhere. So double square baler. You guys don't do real much hay around here, do you?
No, there is some alfalfa producers, and there's a few hay, like Timothy hay, but by and large, you have to get to the other side of the Tennessee River, headed east in Kentucky to get to the hay country. There is a lot of hay in Kentucky. It's just not here in our
Once you get into
line.
more of those hilly regions that can't do row crops as much.
Yep, we're more of a alluvian floodplain here.
Yeah. Well, if there's anybody here listening that does do small square baling, knowing that you can now do two square bales at a time and increase your speed. I actually heard rumors of this square baler over a year ago because I worked with AGCO on their photo and video assets in 2024 for their double square baler. And we knew, they knew because Kubota produces these in Kansas, which is pretty close to where a lot of AGCO's factories are. They had heard rumors this was happening as well, but talking to the guys who had the Massey double square baler, they loved it because much like, any kind of commodity row crop style thing, you are super dependent on your scale and your speed. And immediately with a double square baler, you know what you do? You cut your operating time in half. So now you don't have to have two small square balers going. You can have one. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how the cost kind of works out for anyone who owns the double square baler, because I'm not sure how much more expensive it is, but I do think this is a pretty cool innovation, and Kubota and Massey are the only ones with them on the market currently. I'm sure we'll see more in the future, but I just thought I'd throw that in there because it's kind of fun. All right, now back to everyone's favorite topic, Neil, John Deere.
Before I jump into John Deere, Daniel and I were at the Kentucky Farm Show.
Oh, did you see it there?
I didn't actually pay attention to see the square baler. We were just looking at Kubota's lineup, and we were impressed. Kubota continues to expand its lineup, and when you get and look in their equipment, they've got some really high quality equipment.
We'll talk about that later because I want to have a conversation. We'll go over Hamilton Helmer's 7 powers of how the brands can differentiate themselves. But I've said for a long time, Kubota does have the opportunity to become actually like a really great option in the market. And anyone who owns a Kubota tractor will tell you they love it. Like I've never met someone who has a Kubota. They're like, oh, this thing sucks. Like they're simple, they're reliable. Kubota is a Japanese company, and the Japanese, like I've owned Toyota trucks for most of my life, and they just work. They just keep going. But we'll talk about that in a few minutes because there's a whole conversation we could have on that.
We crawled all over everything up, all the Kubota lineup. We were super impressed, and I think it's a cool company.
Yeah. All right.
On to John Deere.
So this is something that is, I don't want to say near and dear to my heart because Deere hasn't always been my favorite company, but this does affect my daily life. Let's open this. Ag Daily, once again, Deere brings back nearly 250 Iowa workers as demand ticks up. The company confirmed that 245 previously laid off workers will return to plants in Davenport, Dubuque, and Waterloo. I am from Waterloo, so that's why I feel like this does affect me over the coming weeks. Company spokesman said 99 team members have been called back to work at Deere's construction and forestry plants in Davenport and Dubuque, with those employees expected to return mid-February. As demand increases, these callbacks help ensure we have skilled team members in place to support the production across our construction and forestry operations. 146 more returning to Waterloo, in addition to the Eastern Iowa callbacks. Most of Eastern Iowa, they do have, the combine plants in Moline, Illinois. Most of Eastern Iowa is construction and forestry equipment, so that's in Dubuque. In Waterloo, these callbacks at Waterloo tractor operations reflect the needs driven by increased customer demand. We'll talk about that. Said Fabio Castro, Waterloo Works Vice President and Factory Manager. We're excited to recall experienced employees to support our factories. Waterloo employees will support the 8R tractor production and assembling, machining, logistics, and foundry operations. Key functions within Deere's large ag equipment lineup. So, Deere's bringing people back. That's pretty cool. Why do you think they're bringing people back?
I've talked to you about this. I really do feel like it's because, in 2024 and 2025, they were reducing manufacturing operations. And as farm equipment ages, some of it is going to go out of service. And, as there's less new equipment produced and available, people begin to buy the used equipment. And there's only so much used equipment on the market, because you have some units retiring. I think because of those reasons, Deere anticipated the downturn, laid people off, scaled back. It reminds me of Harley-Davidson a little bit, where they're only producing enough units to support the demand that they have.
Yep.
It's a smart operating on Deere's side of things. They realized that the declining ag economy was going to provide less revenue for their company. So they decreased operations, but it also decreased the supply of new equipment, and in turn increased, or over time decrease the availability of used equipment. And because of that, used equipment, there's not as much available. Not that it's much higher in value, but there's just less available. And because of those things, people once there's only so many planters or tractors available, and once they're gone, you have to manufacture new equipment again to continue the market cycle. And Deere, they have more information than everybody else. I think they feel like at some point we're going to cycle back, and they want to be ready when that happens.
Yeah. I know I was talking to a buddy who works in the John Deere tractor factory this last week, and we were just talking about how you and I both know a lot of the industry follows what Deere's predictions or what their moves are going to be, and he was saying that the head of their economist department is some of the best in the country, and I probably agree with that. I bet you Deere's got a team of 50 to 100 people working on predictions and the economy. They have economists working on predictions for their company year round, working on this stuff, and so I can't tell you that they see the future, but they probably have more. They probably have their hands on more data than we could even possibly understand. So I think they are sensing what's going to happen in the equipment space. I agree with you on the used equipment side. I think there has been a lot of, if you drive by any Deere dealer, it's been used equipment on used equipment on used equipment, and also new equipment because, during, let's see, it would have been 2020 and 2021. I mean, that factory was pumping stuff out.
Oh,
Everyone was
man.
working overtime. I did a video on the 8RX yesterday, and the amount of overtime that was going in during that time was crazy because they had orders up to a year for the 8R series, which is just crazy. And since then, I think a lot of things have changed at the factory. They brought the big 9RX line online, so we have the 7 series there, which doesn't run that often. They have the 8 series there. They have the 9 series. They have the big 9 series line, and we'll talk about that in a second. But they're also been working on their 500 horsepower 8 series, which it hasn't been announced yet, but it's going to be announced at Commodity next week, and everyone kind of knows it's happening. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's jump into their quarterly report. As mentioned earlier, Deere stock is way up. I sold my Deere stock years ago. I wish I hadn't because it's performed really well. Caterpillar also is performing super well right now. I think it's the heavy equipment space in general. Let's see what our comments are saying. JD 125, 135 hours tractor. I'm 37 now and more out of reach every single year. Yep, I feel that. Equipment ain't getting cheaper, so don't hold your breath. Let's look at Deere's first quarter net income of $656 million. First quarter shipments ahead of plan as order book strength, diverse customer segments and geographies enable resilience and growth. Net income guidance ranged to $4.5 billion to $5 billion. Deere reported net income of $656 million, so that'd be profit for the first quarter ended February 1st, 2026, or $2.42 a share compared to a net income of $869 million or $3.19 per share for the quarter ended January 26, 2025. So year over year, they're actually down. Worldwide net sales and revenues increased 13%, so revenues up. In the most recent quarter, net sales $8.2 billion or $8.001 billion for the quarter compared to $6.8 billion in the same quarter of 2025. So revenue is up, which is a good thing for a company, but profits are down. Let me see if I can figure out.
That really surprises me a little bit. I mean, when you decrease your labor burden, I guess you're not selling as many units, so that makes profits a little harder to come by. And their operating costs are probably up, but I'm still surprised by that. I figured since they decreased, their amount of labor that they were burdening themselves with, that their profits would actually go up.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of reasons they gave for all that right here. Let me open their actual PDF report. Okay, percent change. Net sales and revenues, so 13% net income. Yeah. I think a lot of this has to do with spend on infrastructure. I think I'm sure their cost of goods has gone up. So I know they didn't do big bonuses for all the staff in Waterloo last year, but they probably all got cost of living increases. Not sure what the percentage of that was compared to inflation, but we talk about inflation for wage workers. We talk about any sort of metal or plastic or rubber that they are putting on these tractors has probably gone up, and I bet you they're starting to feel effects of that a lot more. I also would probably assume, and this is a big assumption, I'm sure the development of this new 8 tractor probably costs a lot of money. I'm sure they've been putting the line in. That probably costs some. Yeah, these are all just assumptions. I probably should have plugged this quarterly report into AI and had it do a summary for me.
I would assume that tariffs have affected them adversely, probably.
Yeah, I was talking to one of their guys who works on the he does parts logistics for them, and so he's in charge of a lot of the movement of parts. And early on, when tariffs were unclear, he was like, there's chances we might have to pay double tariffs on things because we have something go from Mexico through the U.S. up to Canada, assembled in Canada, then Canada back down to the U.S. So you have 2 border crossings of something that's technically a part for them. So I'm sure they haven't onshored anything. They say they are bringing more U.S. manufacturing back, but I don't really believe it. I'm sure they're passing those costs on. So I agree, probably a fat tariff bill. I wish I had some AGCO and CNH data to line up against this, but I don't think they report their quarterly earnings till the end of March. I would also assume that their. Let me see if I can see if there's any R&D spending in here. I bet you their R&D spend's probably pretty high. It kind of always is. But I also construction. They just came out with a new line of construction equipment. We really should just have read this whole report. That probably would have solved our problem. They are opening a excavator factory to produce some of their excavators because they used to produce them with Hitachi and now they're producing themselves. So they came out with a new excavator line. I think it's easy to think that Deere is just all ag, but 40% of their company is construction and turf. So, yeah. What else? What else? Yeah. So, what do you think? What do you think, looking at the macro economy, why do you think Deere's still reporting record high revenues and has great share prices?
I mean, I do feel like they're a dominant company in the space. They've almost got a monopoly on the space, and because of that, they just are in that position where, it's even in a downturn, they can be still extremely efficient and profitable. I think Deere is in the position to hire the best people in the world, and when you hire great employees, your business is great, and it helps you make money because those people are smart. And I feel like Deere has the advantage over other manufacturers because they control so much of the market share. They can hire the best employees, and so they can absorb some of the downturn a little better than some of the other manufacturers can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a part of it. I mean, I live in Waterloo. We had a lot of layoffs, especially end of 2024 and through 2025. We lost more than a few great employees. So I would say employees are part of it, but I bet you there is a lot of R&D spend. That'd be my guess. Deere's always working on something new, something big. Like, I don't like to admit it, but Deere is leading the way in a lot of the technological innovation. I also know they made a few acquisitions last year as well, so that could have been a part of their spend.
Yeah. And I feel like because of their technology, all their different subscriptions, See and Spray, all those technologies, I mean, that's a great way to profit because you don't have to have iron to make money. You can just write software. It only has to be written once and then updated after that. And you can continue to charge either quarterly or yearly, year over year for it. And, it just makes profits just scale.
Let's take and we'll take the conversation into the macro level of equipment of what do we think is going to happen at the macro level. Last note here, kind of like what I mentioned, there's a bunch of influencers running around on social media right now talking about the new 8 Series that's coming out. So at next week at Commodity Classic, Deere is set to release their, I believe it's 540 horsepower 8 Series fixed frame tractor, which is in response to most guys who have an 8RX 410. Like the 8RX 410 is the highest selling 8RX by far, and most guys who are pulling probably just a slightly larger planter than you all say, yeah, we could probably use like 50 to 100 more horsepower out of this thing. I think a big part of it is, in my opinion, I think this is Deere's reaction to Fendt, because Fendt has a 500 horsepower plus. I think they have a 600 horsepower plus fixed frame tractor that does, like, if you're pulling a big planter but you don't want the big articulated tractor, like that jump to an articulated quad track machine with 700 horsepower or 600 horsepower is more than most people need. They really want a fixed frame tractor that's easy to maneuver, that's 500 horsepower, that pulls my planter well, can pull a big grain cart if I need it to, and nothing more. I think there's a lot of guys who are in that, hey, I need a little bit more than the 8R, but I don't need a 9R. And I think Deere understands that Fendt has a tractor that fits that perfectly. And at least from talking to people at the factory and at the engineering facilities, I think a lot of them are kind of like, yeah, we think part of this is probably the push because Fendt has been taking some of our market share in that category.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, like once you jump to the 9R,
you could never use a 9R.
No,
here.
I mean,
you have a 9 Series, but if you bought a new one, that would be excessive for probably anything you need, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't need that much horsepower.
You barely need the 9 Series you have now.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't use it much except for a grain cart, a little bit of tillage, very very little tillage here in my area. It becomes so hard to turn around on the headlands, especially if you have trees like most of Kentucky. So the smaller frame tractor, not articulated, makes a lot more sense for producers here in our area than once you jump to the 9 Series.
I wonder if they're going to come out with a wheeled version, because you know how in the big 9RX they didn't even bother with tires. I wonder if they're going to have I wonder if it'll be an actual 8R series or it'll be just an RX series.
I wouldn't doubt if they don't have a tire. I mean, tires
feel
are
like
so
that thing
popular.
And I mean, the more time goes on, I think we'll go back to tires. I think the industry will trend back towards tires again, because we're going to realize, yeah, these tracks look cool. Like we got the X9 over here, they look cool, but like look at all that crap you got to maintain.
Yeah, the maintenance on them, kind of stinks. But I do love tracks. I mean,
Yeah.
they especially if you're in a wet environment, it limits. Not that it's going to solve your compaction issue, but it definitely helps.
But would you say if you put those big fat LSW tires on there and just lower the PSI, you wouldn't have a similar effect?
I agree. I mean, the LSW does provide more flotation, more similar to a track. Your ride is going to go down a little bit with the LSW.
Really? Have you ever? I've ridden an X9 with them. They're pretty.
Right.
When you have the tire pressure right, like they cushion a lot. Because that was always my complaint with the earlier tracked machines, is they all were so hard. Like you felt every single bump in your seat. But yeah, we agree. There are too many moving parts in tracks, but they look sick on video, and we get a lot more views with the tracks on them than just the tires. All right, so everyone has tractors now. I was reading an article by the Global Newswire earlier, and this is just a more general research and market report from them, and they were talking about the macroeconomic level of tractors. The U.S. agriculture equipment market is projected to grow from 300,000 24 units in 2025 to 345,000 units by 2031. That's a 2.3% increase year over year, which is a decent amount, but it had me thinking, okay, if the market share, if the market for tractors is only growing 2% a year, which I think is good, at what point does everyone have a tractor and we're all just fighting over the same customers? Kind of got me thinking of what is the future of equipment in the U.S. I'd say the U.S. ag market's probably as mature as it's going to get in terms of it's just consolidation from here.
Oh,
Either
for sure.
smaller guys diversifying or scaling. That's where we're going. So the question is that growth actually coming from new customers or the addition of machines, or is it just coming from acquiring someone else's customers? Like, the only way I see revenue increasing in the equipment industry is for it to actually not be about equipment at all, but what Deere's been focusing on is their technology and software.
Yeah.
Like if I'm Deere, I'm thinking, okay, everyone's going to have very similar levels of machines in the future. What can I make sure that my shareholders have a return on every year? That's how any big company thinks about it. I know that's how Deere thinks about it. So I'm interested to see, do we think we're going to see the continued growth of the current U.S. manufacturers in our market, or are we going to see some newcomers come up with smaller tractors? Like the only way I see the equipment market shifting is the big guys fighting over the customers and small guys coming in saying, we have robots that are going to beat your big tractors.
I really feel like that's the future, is we're going to see a lot of small equipment at some point that's automated, and that is going to change the market. It also allows that technology component you're talking about, where automation requires a lot of technology. Like I said, you can write the technology, continue to use it in multiple pieces of equipment. I think a lot of times drones and the robots use similar technologies to be able to guide themselves through the fields and perform operations.
Mm-hmm.
So companies like Deere, Case, as they're automating these things, and there will be some upstart companies that are, that have got started first in these robot spaces,
Mm-hmm.
weeders, etc. That will provide some competition for the big boys, I think. And but probably what will happen is those big boys will acquire those automated companies.
I'm sitting here looking at this X9 here, and I think harvesting might be the exception here. But, I view this as a $1 million liability sitting behind you. One massive liability that when it goes down in the middle of harvest is a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And I just think as we continue to scale, unless you're in a place like, the Great Plains or Saskatchewan or Manitoba, like where you're farming 30,000 acres, like I think most guys in the U.S. could do with 5 smaller tractors. And what I'm not seeing from most of the big OEMs is that small to mid-sized machine that's going to fit that category. You know, I was thinking of what's the company? I think it's Sabato or whatever it is. I saw a video and they retrofitted one of the Deere like 4 or 5 series tractors, the little seeder on it. It was running autonomously. I'm like, why isn't Deere doing that? Like, we see the autonomy stuff on the big tractors. You know, we see those doing big amounts of tillage because obviously there's a retrofit market there. But I'm thinking 50 years down the road, do we see these big machines everywhere, or do we see smaller machines that fit on a pickup trailer, no problem, getting dumped? You know, you can fit 4 of them on a 35-foot gooseneck trailer. You know,
and I really feel like that's the I feel like that's the future is. And I think Deere is coming from it as, you know, they're probably working on it on a small scale, but you know, they have so much cash that they'll wait till somebody has this idea perfected, and then they'll just go and buy it.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a little plug here to one of my fellow Kentuckians, Quentin Pottinger. He's in the central part of Kentucky. He actually seeded his whole entire wheat crop this year, I think, with a 6 series. You know, they're big farmers, but with a 6 series automated tractor.
Really?
Deere, yeah, with a wheat drill behind it, and it automated, you know, drilled his whole entire wheat crop. So
And you didn't tell me about this?
Well, I mean,
that's so cool.
I actually think he made. If you wanted to look at it, I think it's possibly on Progressive Farmer. I think they wrote an article about it.
Let's see if we can find that. That'd be sick. Yeah, I just, you know, so with us starting this wheat farm in Iowa, you know, I'm looking at, you know, the entry point for me. I cannot afford any sort of machinery, right? Like, so our options are smaller options, like either old used equipment or smaller tractors. And we're both thinking about, hey, how do robotics play into this? If we're only going to be doing some test strips that are 15 feet wide, no one needs a sprayer. Do you know what we really need? We need a drone. We need, like, that is way more viable. And I could see as we scale, especially if we're having to rent smaller parcels to try things, it's like, yeah, like the more easy to move, the better. So,
you know, when
what was your buddy's name?
Quentin Pottinger. When we were in FarmCon in Kansas City, I thought it was a unique idea. The girl from, I think she was from Denver, Colorado, and her family farmed, and she actually didn't have a lot of a background in like tech and engineering, but set out and created a robot that is actually functional in the field. You know, it does a lot of the operations that a man can do as far as weeding and spraying and such, you know. And it, you know, her take on it was one of their biggest burdens on their family farm was the labor aspect of, you know, working their fields with a live person. And so she came up with this robot idea and actually got it off the ground and now has a company to do those jobs.
Yeah, I'm not finding the article. Oh, well. Yeah. I think also, you know, depending on how the H-2A policies and immigration policies work out in the U.S., like we talk about, you know, because we're in row crop country, there is a massive specialty crop market on the coasts and in certain warmer regions. So how are these large tractors meeting those needs? Well, I think especially once we get into harvesting needs, we're going to have a lot more smaller tractors fitting that. So what are you looking at?
I want to look up Affinity Farms, which is Quint's farm, automated wheat drilling.
Affinity Farms wheat drilling. What are your guys' thoughts on the equipment market? All of you viewers, what do you think is going to happen? Oh, wait. Is it? Oh, maybe it's on Kentucky Grains. Oh, here we go. I got it. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, here we go. Automated wheat drill.
Hello, I'm Chad at the University of Kentucky. Today I'm out on Affinity Farms wearing an awesome hat that Quint Pottinger gave me, and Quint is working with an autonomous planting system. And so in that system, he's got a John Deere tractor hooked up to a John Deere drill. He's got Sabanto software working with precision planting software, and using Starlink satellite systems as his connecting device in order to plant this field of wheat without a driver. So these fields have a lot of slope to them. Quint is planting wheat, no-till, following a corn harvest. As I said, the fields have slope. We've got tree lines, we've got creeks. Nothing is square in this area. There are a lot of obstacles that can prevent satellite transmission from taking place. That's partly why Quint's working with Starlink, because he can get better service from that system. This is his first year working with this, but he's gone all in on it, and very curious to see how this works for him overall. He's been very pleased up to this point with how planting has gone. Fun to work with farmers that are willing to try new things, willing to be innovative, and always thinking ahead about how they can improve efficiencies in their overall operation. This system, integrating Sabantos technology with Starlink, with precision planting, has potential to be a game changer in how farmers manage their fields in this area.
Cool stuff.
That is cool.
I mean, that would be super cool too. Let me just borrow his tractor for wheat planting season. Dude, that's literally the perfect size. How cool would that be?
It is. It's a neat setup.
You think he's going to drill anything with? I mean, probably not this spring. It'd be sweet to go do a video with him. That'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, I think that video right there is a prime example of where our industry should be heading. Like, that's obviously a personal take, but I think if we want more people to have the opportunity to get in, tractors of that size versus tractors of this size are, yeah.
That's why I really felt like when I was at the farm show and you look, you see companies like Coyote and Kubota were expanding their booths. They had a diversity of equipment in there. Really, I think two of the bigger booths in the farm show this time. We're used to the farm show was dominated by Deere, Case, AGCO, Claas, and all those. With the exception of Case still had a large booth in there, and they had the one of their AF combines in there, but most of the large ag companies had scaled their booths down, where you see Coyote and Kubota bringing more equipment in and a diversity of equipment as well.
Well, I think we need to think about who the target customers are. Deere and I think AGCO both, in Case a little less, but I think all the big three have acknowledged we want the big customers. We want the guys who are going to be at Commodity Classic. We want the guys willing to spend $400 on a ticket to come. Their ideal customer is probably not. I need to get you that on there, so you have to stop squinting so you can actually look at me. I think that the big OEMs want the big customers. You want the 5 to 10,000 acres plus, because that's where their primary R&D is going. But you look at these international companies, specifically, I'd say even Fendt and AGCO fit into this. You go to Europe, they're all over the place because they make that kind of 6 to 7 series tractor that everyone loves. Coyote, LS tractor, that's that Chinese one. Yeah. Kubota, who's the other one? Mahindra.
Oh,
and
Mahindra.
And Deutz.
Yeah, and they got a good-looking lineup.
They all make tractors from the lawn tractor up to the kind of probably peaking at the 7 series. I think Kubota's 8 series tractors are just reskinned Versatiles, if I remember correctly. That is their primary market. That's where all their R&D goes for their ag divisions. And I think I don't want to say they're eating Deere and AGCO and Case's lunch, but I think they are more affordable than the big threes. I think they are easier to work on, and they all seem to be pretty reliable too. Like, I don't meet many people who are having reliability issues with them. I think their biggest thing is probably dealer support. For us as for us starting a farm in Iowa, our options are used. And if we were to ever buy new, I probably would Kubota would probably be my first go-to, just because I know they're affordable. I know they work. They have the precision upgrades that you can get with them. But let's jump into the next section on the equipment. I'm sure most people listening haven't heard of Hamilton Helmer's 7 Powers. I listen to a business podcast that uses this framework to analyze how companies survive/compete against the others. So the 7 powers that Hamilton Helmers lines out in his books are scale economies. So basically, do they have economies of scale? Does that work in their benefit? So I'd say Deere has the scale economy. They have dealers everywhere, all that. Network economies, hey, if you have more of this thing, does it work better? Or if your friends have this thing, does it make your life better? Counter positioning. Are they counter positioned against one of their competitors that makes them stand out? Switching costs. Is it expensive to switch once they're bought into the platform? Is it hard to switch? Branding. Are they well branded? Is their brand desirable? Cornered resource. If there's something only they have that no one else has. And then process power. Are they faster or better at making their thing than anyone else? Do they have a better process than them? So I thought it'd be fun, to go over, do we think, what benefits do all these equipment companies have? So, Deere, what do you think?
I think Deere has the technology market above the other manufacturers. Not to say that, like Case, I know they're working hard to catch up to what Deere has done, but Deere was just ahead of the curve in developing technology, precision technology specifically. And because of that, the other manufacturers were scrambling to catch up. I think Operations Center was developed early.
Oh, yeah, everyone else is still playing catch up.
For sure, and it's a great program. We use it on this farm, and it combines maintenance along with all your data recording and such, and you can incorporate things like See and Spray into it, and a row shut off, and all these different aspects of mapping and such. Because of that, it's very hard to catch up with Deere because of their technology.
So you think we'd call that cornered resource?
I would definitely call it cornered resource.
They're the only ones that have it. I'd say Deere also has the switching costs. I mean, you talk to anyone who you're all bought in a Deere. It would be a tremendous. You could do it, but it would cost a lot to trade this whole fleet and make it reasonable.
You could do it, but it would be over. Like, I'm not the type of guy that does the big multi-unit trades, so it would be like a decade-long process to come out of my Deere fleet.
Yeah. So I'd say Deere has cornered resource. I'd say they definitely have branding. I believe Deere is still one of the top 10 most recognized logos in the entire world. Their brand has eroded over the past 5 years just from some of the right to repair stuff and just equipment prices. I do think the public thinks less of Deere than they used to, but in the farm world, Deere's still got that golden logo. People are
sure.
Literally every single viewer, it feels like, just like fawns over Deere. I'd say they have scale economies. Deere has the benefit of they have dealers everywhere and they have factories all over the world, which I'm not saying it's brought down their prices, but they have the benefit of anywhere you go, you have access to a Deere. And that's something that does well. Network economies.
They definitely have that too. Everywhere you go, every region has a lot of Deere network in it.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that one. Like, I'd say it's not like Facebook. Like, the more people who use it, the better it gets. Like your neighbor, just because he uses Deere does not make your Deere better. I'd say I'd push back on that a little bit of like, it is not improving the overall experience for everyone to have Deere. It just makes it easier to get parts.
I agree.
But I think that fits into scale more than it does network.
That's probably true.
Counter positioning, I'd say technology, maybe. I don't think they're as counter positioned as they like to be. Like, if you put a Fendt and a Case and a John Deere tractor right next to each other, I think there's a pretty good case to be made that they are all pretty similar. Like, I don't think you could say, oh, this one's got this over this, over this, over this, over this. So, yeah. All right. Case, what do we think? How do we think Case fits into this?
I was at the Kentucky Commodity Conference, and Case had their lineup pulled up on a screen so everybody could see. And it's an impressive looking lineup. They've got some great looking new equipment. The combines, I hear the new combines are really impressive. The AF10, I think, is probably as efficient or maybe a little bit more efficient than the Deere in the same class model. Case, and I know they're working hard to develop a software similar to Operations Center. So, Case has a lot of these same benefits that you see Deere having. And, it's a great brand. So I think to me.
I don't
They
think
have a
there's-
little
I don't-
catching up to do,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
they're coming.
I don't think they have anything over what Deere has. I'd say they have less of a cornered resource than Deere has. Like, I don't think there's no special sauce that Case has that Deere doesn't. Minus, I do think they make a better combine. That's just personal opinion. But I'd say anything that is a benefit to Deere is also a benefit to Case. Branding, I'd say, is probably a little worse than John Deere's just because the Case IH merge. Like, people are diehard Case fans for sure, but it's not to the level Deere is. Let's go to AGCO. We can just analyze their whole thing. I think AGCO also has all the same benefits as the rest of them. I'd say they probably have the worst brand presence. I'd say branding's their weakest spot. I personally am probably a little biased. I think they are counter positioned towards the other two in at least a slight amount of way of that they have the most comprehensive line across the board of everything, I think. And I think specifically the Fendt technology and the Gleaner line specifically pose some pretty interesting things to talk about. Specifically, the Gleaner combine, I think, is still one of the smaller combines that you can buy. Like, we're getting to that point where everything's big, and if you want to get a smaller combine, Gleaner's kind of your option. And I think the Fendt tractors are new, and I think they're efficient, and I think they've got a lot of people kind of scratching their heads. And I think that kind of counter positions them against everyone else of, like, you put Deere and Case right next to each other, pretty similar lineups, but then everyone kind of looks like, oh, Fendt's kind of the new kid on the block, like, what's going on there? But I'd say they also lack the scale economies in terms of dealer network. I'd say the cornered resource, I think the only cornered resource they have is that CVT transmission. I don't think there's anything special other than their CVT transmission. Man, that wind is ripping.
It really is. You know, I kind of feel like the AGCO's problem when you look at them overall as a company is they brought so many different companies in,
Yeah.
and I think they have trouble with their culture. You know, where they can't all get on the same team. They're all still kind of inside of a big umbrella company. They're all still intercompeting.
Yeah.
And I think if it wasn't for that, I think they could make a push in the industry stronger than what they're making currently.
Yeah, I think that their branding and yes, the culture. I would say also, I'll throw this in there. Their cornered resource, I totally forgot about this. Precision planting, like precision planting, has probably. I'm not saying that they have as many patents as Deere, but as far as like patents and technology that improves the farmer's bottom line, I'd say Precision is right up there with John Deere. Of like, they've got the technology, and I think the PTX team, or whatever they call it now, does have the ability to maybe one day take on Ops Center. I think it's still a long ways away, but I think that's something that I'm in the back of my head of like, will Ops Center have a rival that comes out of Precision Planting one day, owned by AGCO and whatever that all turns into?
Yeah, and you could see at Farm Progress and at the Louisville Farm Show, there was
They
a major
put out big presence.
yeah, big presence at both shows, which shows you they're trying to make a push into that market hard.
Yeah. I think that's AGCO's. I think if AGCO, if they don't mess it up, I think if AGCO can bring what makes Precision Planting great and bring it across the board, I think that's the win. Are you paying attention, Neil?
Yeah, I'm sitting over here looking at the comments. I am definitely paying attention.
Neil said worst buy was a Ford truck. Well, today with parts manufacturing being what it is, all of them have problems. I would agree with that. I have a Toyota, the most reliable vehicle. Toyota makes the most reliable vehicles. Hands, like, it is an undisputed fact across the world. Toyota makes the most reliable vehicles. I've already had an engine put in the truck, and I have like 4 recalls on it, and I have a good truck. And so I don't even want to know what's going on with Chevys and Fords and Dodges.
You know, I really don't hate Fords that much, but I love the comment section of the. I mean, I'm still
Dude,
answering
that video.
still continually answering comments in the comment section. I made the video just for that. So, Ford guys, I don't really hate Fords that much. We just wanted a great comment section, and we created one.
Which makes you guys feel better. If I were to choose a heavy duty truck, I used to work on a fleet of Fords. Take a Ford any day. My wife owns a Chevy, and my goodness, I have put so much stupid money into that truck. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started.
Yeah,
all right.
I just overall don't like trucks. Period. I mean, like, I have some Chevys, I have some Internationals, whatever.
I mean, if I hadn't gotten a deal,
I
on
have a
that ton-
Dodge.
Yeah, your personal car's a. You have a Honda?
Yeah, I have a Honda. Yeah.
Little Honda CRV or whatever.
Saving money.
Okay, let's go on to Kubota. What do we think of Kubota in terms of Hamilton's 7 powers?
You know, I was, like I said, I was really impressed with the Kubota lineup. They had a lot of options for people. They had a very high quality line of equipment. Like you could tell, it was manufactured well, very sturdy for its size, especially. I'm impressed with their company, and like another great thing about Kubota is there's a lot of dealerships out there.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
they have a super strong construction line. I've never heard any big problems with their construction line. We can respond to comments later. Pay attention to me, Neil.
I love comments.
I know you do. I'll take that off if you're going to keep looking over there. We'll respond to comments in a second. Let's get through this section. Kubota, do they have scale economies?
You know, I think they're working on that.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I think for a long time, it just took them a long time to get. They were under such pressure from the other major manufacturers. It just took them a while to get some market share, but I think they have that now, and that is something that I think for that company in the next 10 years, they will have achieved that.
Yeah, I agree. Network economies.
Definitely, I think you know as you see you know more Kubotas in the field, that makes people want to explore that option. I mean, I've never been in a Kubota booth in my life till this year, you know, and I just noticed it, went over, started looking at the equipment, and I was impressed. So
Yeah, I think if you needed a smaller tractor around here, I think it'd be a compelling option. Counter positioning, I think they are counter positioned well as they're not a big OEM. Like I think you could, you know, if you, once again, put similar sized tractors from Deere, Case, Agco all up next to each other. You put a Kubota next to them. I think Kubota is going to get a lot of questions asked about it, and I think as soon as you start listing prices, I think there'll be possibly a compelling option there. But I don't know their prices.
I think they have a lower cost option for a very similar, you know, a very similar quality as the large OEMs with a smaller price tag.
Do you know if you can buy a mid-sized Deere loader these days with actual like hydraulic controls, or is it all electronic over joystick now?
You know, I'm not sure about that.
Because I feel like that when I think of Kubota and even some of Massey's smaller tractors, I think, oh, I can actually get the option where it is still a hydraulic valve when I move the handle, not just the electronic joystick. We should, we're at Commodity, we should look into that. Switching costs, I don't think there really is any switching costs. Like, unless Kubota really improves their technology suite, like I don't think there's that much cost from someone with a Kubota switching to a Deere. Like I don't know, I other than the extra cost of the Deere, like I don't think you're losing much if you switch from a Kubota to a Deere. Branding, it's kind of getting there. I've never met a diehard Kubota fan in my life. I do like the orange color.
Yeah, they're great looking tractors. I think their brand is still an up and coming brand, but I think they are working on it. Like, one of my neighbors has a wheel loader now, and I think I have two neighbors with track loaders. So I mean, you're starting to see like people see the equipment. Their neighbors are starting to run it, and they're their brand is definitely growing.
Yeah. Cornered resource. I don't think they have any sort of cornered resource. I would say we haven't mentioned here, Kubota does own Great Plains, which Great Plains is not huge in a lot of categories, but if you are in the drill market, Kubota does make a great drill in terms of Great Plains makes a great drill. And I think we'll continue to see Kubota expand onto their equipment line. So, but I think that'll be through acquisition. I think Kubota will keep buying either tillage manufacturers or certain types of manufacturers. So I don't think they have a corner resource quite yet, but if Kubota makes a few more acquisitions, like say they bought Kinsey one day, like that would be a really good acquisition. Like they would be the ones that have a Kinsey planter now, and there's a pretty good audience there. Process power, they probably have the exact same process power as anyone else. Although I will say they have the benefit of Japanese manufacturing knowledge over anyone else. Like I bet you Kubota, maybe not the stuff they build in the U.S., but I bet you their lines are semi-dialed. If there's any bit of Japanese culture that's come from overseas into U.S. factories, like the Japanese manufacture like no other.
I love Japanese products.
Yeah.
I mean, they make great products. They're bulletproof.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan of it. Let's see. What do you guys think about Massey Ferguson's good tractors? I'm a little biased because Massey Ferguson is one of our media company's clients, and I have friends that work in the Massey team. I think they make a good product that price wise competes better than it. Like I think you can get the same quality and tech features out of a Massey as you can anyone else. I think they're once again, and I've told the AGCO team this. The issue comes down to dealers. Like you have to be able to get that tractor in people's hands and know that they have service with that. So I think they make a great machine. Same thing with Fendt. Massey's all over Europe. They're all over the place. They make good tractors. They also have a CVT transmission that is super fluid and good. Yeah.
I'm going to talk about my favorite Massey product, which is the sprayer. I love their sprayer. I hadn't actually got to run one, but I've seen it now for 3 or 4 years around at the ag shows, and I've been super impressed with the quality it has, the size it is. You know, I mean, if you're not a large producer, it's very hard to upgrade to one of the large Deeres. I think their smaller sprayer is still lacking.
Deere's smaller sprayer?
Deere's smaller sprayer is lacking over its big sprayer, and I think Massey kind of fills that space. Like if you're that, 500 2,000 acre grower, the Massey sprayer makes a lot of sense.
100%, yeah. And I think their planter line is really compelling too, if you get the right planter. The beauty of the Massey planter line is you get a bunch of that precision stuff that most guys take off their Deere case planters and put on anyways. But as far as Deere tractors go, and that's what I'm saying when we are talking about like counter positioning. When you put any of the big OEMs against each other, put Case, put John Deere, put Kubota, put Massey, put Fendt all next to each other. They all do the same thing. Maybe Deere and Fendt have some of the fancy technology, but more or less like they're engines and transmissions with hydraulic valves and a hitch, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's not much from tractor to tractor that's different these days, which is why I think Deere's long-term play will be we have to be in the technology space because we know, hey, if we have See & Spray, we'll just license it to Fendt and put it on their spray or whatever, or Case, whatever that may be, because tractors are tractors and they're going to get swapped around.
Sure. And I think a lot of it comes down to two things. It comes down to brand preference and your dealer network that you're working with.
Yes.
If you don't have a good dealer of any specific brand in your area, it becomes very difficult to run that because of the parts division of that said dealer and the service department. And also just are they buttholes or not? I mean, pardon my French, but
I mean, yeah, but I think if we go back to 2020 and 2021 when Deere's selling tractors at the wazoo, it did not really matter what the Deere dealer did or the case, really anyone, because there was nothing around because of the supply chain. Like they could kind of just act how they wanted because there were not very many consequences. Like, okay, cool, you still have to buy a tractor for me, like pay up. We have stories that we don't need to share here online, but like we've got stories of equipment manufacturers doing equipment manufacturer things. So
yeah, I had, I heard a lot of horror stories during that when the equipment market was booming and they were just slinging stuff everywhere. And this is not confined to just one dealer network or one manufacturer. This was a problem across the board where they were selling so much equipment they couldn't service what they were selling. There was some problems from the COVID manufacturing era, and the manufacturers were selling so much equipment they weren't willing to service or they weren't willing to provide a good service to the people that had bought the products from them. I think it's burnt a lot of people, really.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there were probably people who swapped their – let me say, I know plenty of people swapped their fleet because of those things. Like they were doing straight trades. They said, we're done with this OEM. We're moving to a different thing. I think that's probably going to become less and less of a thing as we get farther away from that and all the manufacturers catch up with themselves. And also I think everyone's realizing the less dealer model is better. We're going to continue to see the consolidation of dealers for every brand across the board because, if you're John Deere, why work with 500 dealers when you can work with 50 or 5 or whatever that ends up being? But all right, let's get out of the equipment. We've been talking about that for too long. I think all the OEMs, really it comes down to, are they going to make good products and take care of their customers? It's really anyone's game. I do think Deere is going to need to start playing not defense. I think Deere's going to need to get really aggressive in the right ways to maintain their leadership. I think they're always going to have a pretty large lead, but we've talked about it before. I mean, International Harvester had 87% of the harvesting market at one point, and now they don't exist. So let's not say that all these companies are going to stay big and great forever. There could totally be a world where other manufacturers come in and shake everything up.
Yeah, and I think-
especially the robot companies.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. I think that is like if Deere is going to fall, like if you saw that equipment manufacturer topple, it would be because
Yeah.
there was an up and comer robot company that wasn't willing to sell.
Yes. And I think there could potentially be a company like that. And especially with these 7 powers, I mean, you get the factory, you have scale economies, network economies. Oh, as soon as everyone starts buying these robots and the even the infrastructure, like, you know, we could talk about network economies of like Ops Center is kind of the thing. And as Ops Center brings on more apps, well, there's more robot companies. Okay, well, the robot companies now let third-party manufacturers develop software for it. Oh, well, now everybody's doing it. Now everyone's using it. Counter positioning. A robot's better than a big tractor. That's your counter positioning. Switching costs. Hey, you know, it's a lot easier to drive a trailer around with a bunch of mini robots than it is to go buy a semi and a tractor and things like that. Branding. You can just say, hey, we're different than everyone else. Cornered resource. You have the robots. Process power. I mean, that might be the only one, but a robot company is one that could take all 7 of these powers and just like blow everyone else out of the water.
I really think that. I mean, like if you that's what I think.
So if any of the OEMs are listening to this, build frickin' robots. As people working in this industry, as someone who intends to be a farmer in this industry for the next 50 years in some capacity, I'm thinking a lot more about robots than I am tractors or small tractors instead.
I'll say this as a I mean, as a farmer that wants to optimize, I feel like that's what I'm most interested in when I go to these farm shows right now.
Yeah.
You know, seeking those companies out and looking at their products. I haven't got a product yet from one of those companies, but you know, I would like to have one.
We're
at some
working
point
on
in
it.
the future.
We'll make something happen. All right.
Let's go to the comments for a second.
Okay.
I'm dying to read some comments.
Okay, Neil. All right. Let's see where are we at? Wow, we have a lot of comments. RWK, what's your name? You seem to have a lot of comments in here. How much easier it is to work on Fendt? I think it's probably about the same as anything else. I have an 06 Dodge Cummins that I'll never own. New trucks are crazy. Yep, I agree. New trucks cost $100,000 for a pickup truck is a stupid waste of money. Like, go buy a house. Don't buy a pickup truck.
There's the Polaris tractor.
Yeah, I haven't heard that name in a long time.
I saw at one time I saw a JCB that one of those super high speed JCB tractors.
Those things, I don't know what JCB's long-term play is. Because, like, they make great construction equipment, and in Europe, they have tractors everywhere.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're not making a play into the U.S.? You
I
think it's just because, like, they're so heavily Europe designed?
I think so. I think they dominate a lot of the European market, and because of that, they just haven't focused on the U.S. Now, they have put an emphasis, I think, on that telehandler skid steer.
Those things are sick.
They are. They're neat products, and they've sold one here in this county, actually. We have a farmer in this county with one of those products.
Yeah.
I actually have a JCB telehandler that it's been pretty good. You know, we're stacking the hours on it now, and
How many hours you got on it?
It's probably, we're probably upwards 6,000 plus.
I think my brother-in-law's got one with like 11,000. And
Yeah.
the biggest thing, I did the valve body on the control stick, like the control stick one time. And other than that, it was a pain to work on, but it just like kind of keeps going. I mean, we don't use it heavy production. It's just to move stuff around and load salt and stuff like that. But yeah, they work.
The fuel system on mine has been the biggest hurdle. Most everything else on it's been pretty solid.
Massey makes a great looking tractor, but it's all about the dealer and parts supply in the farm world, 100%. I think Massey and Fendt tractors are the coolest looking, but if you can't get parts to keep them running, it doesn't matter. Kubota isn't about $100 cheaper than JD. Probably all depends on the dealer and spec options and things like that. And that's the thing, when it comes down to price in the equipment world, it does all kind of balance out in the long term. Like, there's no bargain at all. It's all expensive.
Yeah, there's no bargain in the farm equipment world. They're all high.
Here in VA, it's all about Kubota Deere because we have dealers that support us. Yep. I really like their planters. I'm assuming that was talking about Massey planters. Polaris tractors. Mr. Neal, what do you need to spray Johnson grass?
Clethodim. That is the key. It's an old technology, but it works great with Johnson grass, and a lot of areas have developed resistant rhizomes, and Clethodim still. Not to say that there isn't some resistance from that chemistry in certain strains of Johnson grass, but by and large, for the most part, that will take out the Johnson grass plant and the rhizome too. So the best way to eliminate Johnson grass is to get out there and dig the rhizome out with a shovel. So if you have, if you have some persistent Johnson grass that continues to be a problem in your field, go out there with the shovel, dig it out. It won't come back then.
Oh, good old weed resistance. Spell that, please. Can you spell that?
Clethodim.
I just type it in the chat, okay? Oh man,
It would be like the brand name would be Select.
Select.
Yeah.
Who
And
manufactures
and I think Meta, that generic manufacturer, makes one called Volunteer.
that? Got it.
CLETHODIM. A selective post-emergence herbicide used to control annual and perennial grasses and broadleaf crops like soybeans, cotton, alfalfa, peanuts, and vegetables. It's a great option for any type of grass, but especially Johnson grass. And you can, you can mix it with the dreaded Roundup and make it even more effective.
Well, we're going to talk about Bayer here in a few minutes. It's already 7:30, man. We're not leaving enough time for that conversation. Okay, let's go to some on-farm finance. AgriPulse reports, Noah Wicks at AgriPulse reports, farmers are increasingly turning to debt to make it through a challenging farm economy. Amen to that. According to the USDA's most recent farm income forecast, farm sector solvency is expected to weaken this year as value of debt outpaces assets. The forecast suggests debt to asset ratios will increase from 13.49% in 2025 to 13.75% in 2026. Over the last year and a half or two, there has definitely been some tightening in terms of overall ag economy and some amount of additional pressure by way of credit conditions and repayment, said Nate Kaufman, Senior Vice President and Omaha branch of the executive for Kansas City Fed. Liquidity is also likely to decline in 2026. Amen to that. The Economic Research Service for forecast says working capital or cash available to cover operating expense after paying off debt due within a year is expected to drop from $154.9 billion in 2025 to $40.6 billion in 2026. ERS expects farm sector equity to increase in 2026 by 1% when adjusted for inflation. Assets are expected to increase by 1.3%, and debt is expected to increase by 3.2% adjusted for inflation. Let's see. The largest spike of all this occurred in 1986 when debt to asset ratio reached 22.19%, and the debt to equity ratio reached 26 to 51%. Smaller, less significant spikes occurred in 1999, 2003, and 2010. Most recently in 2021, debt to equity ratios climbed to 16.41%, and debt to asset ratios climbed to 14.1% before falling again in subsequent years. Let's pull up this graph right here. So we got the 80s farm crisis over here. So that's a big spike. We have a spike here.
And I never looked at that. That's incredible.
So like when people say that we're in another farm crisis, like it's rough, but my goodness, like that's crazy.
That is crazy.
Like I think we forget, like when we complain about high interest rates, like I think our operating line of the business is like 8 or 9% right now for a revolving line. And that is based off of market rates and then slightly above. So what are interest rates are what, 6 right now?
Yeah, probably about 6.
Somewhere
six,
in the 6%.
6.25, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in the 6 to just before 7 range. Back then, most interest rates on pretty much, and even mortgages, which have the lowest interest rates, were 18 to 23%. So when you have the value of land fall out so quickly and you have all this high interest debt, like obviously you're not going to be able to make those payments. Something makes sense. And yeah, so when people are like, oh, we're in another farm crisis, I'm like, guys, land is still super well valued. Like it could probably, like, it's probably gone down a little bit in some areas, but like, you know, like land prices are
Here it hadn't.
Yeah, land prices are still super high. Sorry. I didn't pick that up, did I?
Actually had I was talking to a landlord today, and they had bought some land during COVID and financed it at a pretty high rate, and the bank was allowing them to refinance it this week.
Really?
Yeah. So, they purchased it at a value for that time period, but with a high interest rate. I guess they had knocked out some of their debt load, and the bank was allowing them to refinance at the lower rate.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's easy to look at the news headlines and say it's all falling apart. There are people hurting, there are people suffering, but we do have Chapter 12 bankruptcy in 2025 or 2026, which they did not have in the 80s farm crisis. So, even when you see bankruptcy numbers in the news, know that especially farms can refinance a lot of their debt and negotiate their bankruptcy to a point where they can still farm again the next year. Like, bankruptcy is not the end of farms in 2026. Like, the farm crisis happened, and you and I probably both agree the government is not going to let that happen. Like, I've heard stories of some banks having some issues with their finances themselves, and the Fed is going to come in and fix those problems, or they'll get acquired by another bank with the support of the Fed. So it's not great. I would say that we don't want more debt, at least for us in the media company. We don't operate exactly like a farm, but I do try to think, in terms of the ag economy, because it affects our business. Like, our goal is to reduce debt load and not bring on any more debt this year. And I think farmers are also thinking that. That's why we're seeing so many low early payments this year, is because most guys are like, I'm going to hold cash as long as I possibly can this year and not put myself in as much debt as possible.
Yeah, I think that's across the board what you're seeing, and I think that's not only in the ag space. That's in a lot of industries. They've realized that
free money is gone.
Yeah, we're in a tough economy, and people are realizing, hey, we need to really buckle down, look at what we're spending money on, and try to reduce debt as much as possible over the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've had lots of phone calls with clients about reduced budgets. I mean, every single client has reduced budgets this year mostly. And even if they're not reducing budgets, we know their revenue is probably going to be down, just given how last year went. You want to pull up this article in FMC?
Yeah.
Just read those top few bullets for us. FMC is a company we never talk about, but it is a pretty big company and has had a lot of roles in agriculture. So just read those key takeaways right there. This is iGrow News. This is written by Sefer Achard.
Read the key takeaways.
Yeah.
So FMC is an interesting company. They make some great products, and I know that they've been looking to acquire additional lines. So, key takeaways: FMC outlined 2026 priorities focused on balance sheet strengthening, portfolio competitiveness, and new product commercialization. The company plans to pay down $1 billion in debt through asset sales and licensing, including the sale of its India commercial business. FMC's board authorized exploration of strategic options to enhance shareholder value. New active ingredients are expected to generate $300 to $400 million in sales in 2026, representing strong year-over-year growth. FMC provided a 2026 outlook reflecting post-patent pressure on rye Nexapril and ongoing market pricing challenges. I'm not sure what that product is. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah. So I did some research on this because I subscribe to an ag business newsletter by Shane Thomas, and when FMC says they're seeking out strategic options, that means in Wall Street speak that they are either searching to merge or potentially be acquired by someone else. Let me look up FMC's stock. FMC's stock is not doing great right now. It's at 14 USD. If we look at the 5-year chart in 2022, it was $124 a share, and they are currently sitting at $14 a share. That's really bad in Wall Street terms, especially when the markets have been at all-times high everywhere else.
I mean, you see that headline right there, trying to reduce debt. I mean, I think
look at this. Let's just look at this. Look at this stock chart, okay? Way up. Everything ran up during COVID, but that is a hard fall off over here. That is not good.
I bet that's...
Let's see how they compare to Corteva.
If you looked at a lot of...
that's Corteva's comparatively at the max. Corteva is still at a peak.
But you're looking, when you see Corteva, that's one of the most dominant farmers across the ag space.
But, when we talk about FMC used to be a bigger player. I don't know if you know this. I learned this because I was in an airport recently. I looked up, and you know what I saw? An FMC logo on the Jetway Bridge. Because there was a time where FMC had acquired some industrial manufacturing companies, worked in the aerospace industry. Those have all been since sold off. But I think from a strategic standpoint, they have really struggled to find their focus, and I think they finally found it back in agriculture and chemicals. But I think there's a chance it could be too late because they have just been, we don't talk about FMC that much.
Let's look at BASF because they're a very similar company.
Let's see. BASF stock.
They don't have the market dominance of like a Corteva or a Bayer.
All right, let's look at this. All right, not as good as Corteva,
But still not as bad as FMC.
let's look at Bayer. The Max. Okay, Bayer's not doing great in the ag department. I'd be interested to see how they're.
I was really scared they were having such a bad year last year, but you could see them. You know, they kind of.
I'm impressed with that little uptick right there.
Yeah, they've been working hard, I think, at lining their company back out.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Yeah, I know Bayer as a whole, there were talks internally about potentially selling the ag division just because of the liability, which we're going to get to in a few seconds. Yeah, FMC, I don't know what the future holds for them. I think the only, like, if you're looking to acquire someone, I feel like if we're talking about big ag companies, Corteva and Bayer and BASF have no reason to acquire them. Syngenta, maybe, or some sort of Chinese subsidiary, potentially. But I don't know what patents FMC has that would be helpful for anyone else. So I'm just interested to see how that goes out, but I just want to kind of cover some of the ag business stuff. All right, let's get to the big one. Bayer proposes $7.25 billion Roundup settlement. This is from Successful Farming by their farm doc by Ryan Hanran. The Associated Press, David A. Lieb, reported that agrochemical maker Bayer and attorneys for cancer patients announced a proposed $7.25 billion settlement Tuesday to resolve thousands of U.S. lawsuits alleging the company failed to warn people that its popular Roundup could cause cancer. The proposed settlement comes as the U.S. Supreme Court is preparing to hear arguments in April on Bayer's assertion that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's approval of Roundup without a cancer warning should invalidate claims filed in state courts. Lieb reported that case would not be affected by the proposed settlement, but the settlement would eliminate some risk from eventual Supreme Court ruling. Patients would be assured of receiving settlement money even if the Supreme Court rules in Bayer's favor. Lieb reported, and Bayer will be protected from potentially larger costs if the high court rules against it. There we go, key wording there. The deal calls for Bayer to make annual payments into a special fund for up to 21 years, totaling as much as $7.25 billion. The proposed class settlement agreement, together with the Supreme Court case, provides an essential path out of litigation uncertainty and enables us to devote our full attention to furthering the innovations that lie at the core of our mission. Health for all, hunger for none, said Bill Anderson, CEO of Bayer. According to Neely's reporting, this litigation and resulting costs underscore the need for guidance from the Supreme Court on clear regulation in American agriculture. Bayer still faces 67,000 active lawsuits. That is a crazy number of lawsuits.
That is crazy.
The Lawsuit Information Center, Ronald V. Miller Jr., reported that Bayer had already paid more than $10 billion in prior verdicts and settlements and still faces 67,000 active claims. In addition to the proposed settlement, the company has quietly reached at least $3 billion in separate settlements of pending cases, including the resolution of a $2.1 billion Georgia verdict, Miller reported. That is a lot of money.
It is. I want everybody to think about that the House bill that was trying to get pushed through that was going to limit lawsuits on those big, large chemical manufacturers.
Well, let's pull up what happened today.
Okay. What worries me about that is if that was to pass, it would allow lawyers to go after farmers more easily.
And that was my take. I actually recorded a video. For Instagram talking about how if we do not let these big companies get the blame, the next logical person for any consumer is to target the farmer. And guys, we do not want that.
No.
And I was afraid to post it because, we work with chemical companies and
Sure.
we are liable for things we say in terms of our business. But I don't think we shouldn't be afraid of that, of like the next logical choice for these lawsuits. If Bayer and Corteva and BASF and FMC, Syngenta, if they all have some sort of chemical lawsuits come against them, but they're saved from that through federal law, then the farmers at the county and the state level are going to get prosecuted. And every farmer in the country has probably used Roundup. Like I'd say 99.9% of farmers, even the organic guys, use Roundup sometimes,
Yeah, and it's like not like we have a team of lawyers behind us that are going to save us from something
100%.
like that.
And we have to be honest. If there's 67,000 lawsuits out there against Bayer for Roundup, should we keep denying that it doesn't cause cancer?
Yeah, I don't know whether it does or not, but I mean, I know anytime you're around any kind of industrial chemical for any length of time, that's probably not a good, safe option for yourself.
Yeah, we got the sprayer right behind me here. You have a concentrated thing of Roundup, 100%. Yeah, it's going to get diluted a ton. And so maybe at the macro level across the country, maybe it's not going to cause cancer for you. But I can guarantee you, if you're the guy who's been handling it for 20 years, there's a reason that any wise farmer puts on gloves and a mask when he's loading chemicals. And there's a reason that everyone who doesn't usually ends up dying a lot younger than they should.
You know, my dad's 75 sitting up there with Parkinson's, and you think it couldn't have been caused possibly by ag chemical?
I mean, that's the conversation in Iowa right now. We have the race for the commissioners on right now. And so, like the ag commissioner, and the big conversation is, hey, Iowa has the highest cancer rates in the country, and we also have the most corn and soybeans that require Roundup in the entire country. Is there a link between that? Is it in our water supply? Are the nitrates causing it? Like, the conversation at large in the nation is around, at least when it comes to our food, is, are these chemicals killing us? And we have to be honest with ourselves. I, as a person who works in this industry and is completely dependent on this industry, I also take my health super seriously, and I don't buy the processed stuff from the grocery store. And I am conscious of, like, hey, do I have Roundup in my blood because of the years and years and years of use?
Well, here's what I mean. I've sprayed chemicals my whole life, so you know, I mean, I've used the chemicals to keep weeds out of my fields. But here's what I'll say: what is our biggest problem in agriculture from a commodity standpoint? It's oversupply.
100%.
What if we remove the chemicals from or we removed our ability to use the chemicals on our field? What would happen? There would be a lot less supply.
Yeah.
Solving the oversupply problem.
And our export markets would be destroyed because obviously all the other countries with less developed laws are going to keep spraying that stuff. But that would then onshore a bunch of stuff of, hey, we have farmers that have a product that we can buy. The export markets aren't good. The middlemen infrastructure will figure out, hey, like, this is what could happen.
Yeah, there's not going to be as much supply to export, but at that point, you don't need the export market because, you know, I mean, you're feeding less people overseas, but you're still providing a safer product onshore for your citizens at a smaller supply. So what does smaller supply do? Increase price.
Yeah.
Which is what we need.
Yeah. And, you know, you and I were thinking about doing some less conventional things. And, like, I'm pretty actively thinking about, like, Neil, wait to respond to the comment.
I can't. I love comments.
Okay.
Y'all comment. I love to read them.
Okay. Then we're going back to reading the next article because we only got like 15 minutes. Okay. Well, imagine how much they actually made if they're willing to settle that amount. Yeah. Bayer's made a lot of money. So every chemical company has made a lot. Chemical monkey. That's a funny word.
That's probably true.
Before Roundup, we used Treflin, and I used to be covered in that each day from spraying.
Yeah. I've used Treflan a lot here too.
Would not recommend being covered in it.
It turns everything yellow.
So, following all of that, just today, Trump order pushes glyphosate production, Roundup chemical hated by Maha. Yeah, so that article about the Roundup settlements came out, I believe, this morning, or maybe it was yesterday, and then today this comes out. President Donald Trump, this is from CNBC, so take that as you will. It was the first one that popped up in my news feed. President Donald Trump on Wednesday issued an executive order invoking the Defense Production Act to promote the domestic production of phosphorus and the weed killer glyphosate, which he said is critical to both defense and food security. Glyphosate is often targeted by supporters of the Make America Healthy Again movement as a harmful chemical. Trump aligned with the MAHA movement after Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., dropped out of the 2024 election. I find it that ensuring robust domestic elemental phosphorus mining and United States-based production of glyphosate-based herbicides is central to the American economy and national security. Trump said in that order, without immediate federal action, the United States remains inadequately equipped and vulnerable. I agree with that statement. I do agree because most of our Roundup and most of our glyphosate does come from China. Like, I think 90% of it or something does come from China. So there is a national security risk there from the aspect of, if we went to war tomorrow, we needed to produce as much crops as we possibly could to feed an army. I get that. But also, it does kind of, RFK, you're going to look, the media is going to drag you through the mud over the next few weeks for sure.
You know, I mean, I think it's, as you know, I mean, let's be real. RFK participated in one of the largest settled out chemical lawsuits in the ag space ever. So he was very effective in
Finished it.
litigating against the chemical manufacturers. And I think when he came into office or he came into the cabinet position, he was very aggressive in his wording against the chemical manufacturers. As he's been in office, his stance has softened. More than likely, it's the lobbyist in the ear. You know?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we can say it, I guess. Like, everyone in Trump's cabinet, you do what Trump says to stay in his cabinet. Like, you can't. Trump's the type of guy you probably don't disagree with very often, and so I'm sure, yeah. And this is hot news now, and it's going to blow over. And I think the key thing is it's not they're just going to like spin up a glyphosate factory tomorrow. It's that they need to increase phosphorus production. So it's really a mining agenda with the long-term goal of like, hey, let's onshore some of the mining of this material. So I think it's getting blown out of proportion because it is the ingredients in glyphosate that they're trying to produce more of, which do also go into other things. Like phosphorus is not just used in glyphosate.
No,
so,
I mean it's one of the the core fertilizers that's used in the U.S. I will say more than likely it's overused. I feel like isn't
everything in agriculture overused at this
for
point?
sure. You're going to hear a bunch of agri-retailers say you got to use phosphorus, and I'm not saying you don't need it. I'm just saying it's probably overused and overpriced.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think the future of agriculture, we need to go from a less maximize production mindset to how do we produce the most with the least. I think that should be the mindset of, if capital's tight, how do we produce the best crop with the least amount of inputs and prices possible? Like, that's the whole thing with this Iowa farm. It's like, can we do this with as little capital as possible? Like, I'm pulling every string I can, making every phone call I can, and trying to get as creative as possible to make sure that we can do this in some form of profitable way down the road without having to, have $1 million line of credit just to keep operating. And I think, and our industry just doesn't think that way. I think it's changing. Like this year, everyone is deciding, we're going to spend less money on our inputs because we don't have a choice anymore.
Well, I think for years you saw those high yield networks, and I got caught up in that at one point in my career, where you were just trying to push.
But Randy Dowdy can grow a 600 bushel corn.
Yeah, you're just trying to try to push your production as high as possible.
No one ever said he did it profitably.
Don't spare any expense on any input. I think that is an idiotic approach, especially in 2026. I mean, that is an approach that will bankrupt you. And don't get caught up in that high yield chasing. I mean, why? Like, what benefit is that? Just because you out yielded your neighbor, is that necessarily a good thing? I mean, probably not.
I mean, especially with hybrid, we're told a lot of these hybrids, we're always talking about, they have, they just keep on the bushels more. They have higher bushels, but we have these non-GMO varieties out here, and most guys will tell you, I grew non-GMO and it outperformed my GMO corn last year, and I spent a quarter of the amount I did on seed the year before. And so I think guys are starting to come around to that, and that's only happening because of market pressure. If we were not in a down ag economy and corn was $7, no one would care. I was like, spend as much money as possible, throw it on. Yeah,
and I think that's a stupid approach. I made the video the other day about the longer photo period in soybeans. And somebody made a comment on there. Well, you could make multiple passes of a fungicide or something like that, and I don't know, one of those hormones, and it will add nodes to your soybeans. How about just planting them earlier, and the only thing you did was move your date forward, and you increased your yield, versus you spent a bunch of money on chemicals to increase your yield, but you spent the money on chemicals, so it was negated by
I worked for an ag retailer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he did.
Well, I mean, we get into cotton too. I mean, you look at cotton production, you're doing like 17 passes on everything or whatever it is to grow a product that has been selling for a lot lower than corn and soybeans has for a lot longer. And it's just like, how do we get to this point where we're just okay producing this? I don't think we should go into it tonight because I have a question is like, what do we think the future of our industry is? And do we want to talk about the 7 powers in regards to how farmers operate? But I think that's a long discussion. Does anybody have any questions who's listening? Do you guys have any questions for us?
Yeah, I would love to answer some comments. type some comments on there we can answer.
Okay. What comments do you want to answer? Good. I hope Trump gets rid of DEF fluid and DPF. Yes, I also. Yeah, I think it's. I don't know if he's gonna get rid of it. Like, there's still so much that has to happen. Trump can't just sign a bill that doesn't happen. Like, we have the House and the Senate to make stuff happen. In the long term of things, I do think it's going to make it easier to delete trucks. I don't think DEF and DPFs are going to go away, but I do think the option to delete is going to be more legally accepted in the next few years. And in some states, you can totally get away with it already. But
Oh yeah, they've already like decriminalized it, hadn't they? Where they were prosecuting people that were
not in California.
But most other states have decriminalized it, where if you're deleting trucks, you're not going to go to prison for 20 years or whatever,
Yeah.
or lose your business. I mean, how stupid is that?
I remember when the Diesel brothers got all caught up in that, and that was happening. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
So,
It's
any other
ridiculous.
questions?
Did you enjoy the show? I mean, I'm curious. Did you guys get anything out of it? Did you like it? What could we do to make you
Yeah.
like the show better?
Man, yeah, we had a whole segment too about we were gonna watch a bunch of funny videos and found out that we're gonna get copyright striked if we play these Instagram videos. You follow Crop Duster Pete on Instagram?
I do.
Dude,
yeah.
that guy is so funny. Oh
is
my
funny.
gosh. There was one video he's like, "Can we all normalize making the text on Reels bigger so I can watch while driving?" He's flying a plane. You want to talk about an industry I'm so sad we're probably going to lose is like one day crop dusters are going to be replaced by drones. Like anyone who's in crop dusting will tell you it won't happen, but like think about it. Like in 50 years, we're probably not going to be flying planes like they are now, but my goodness, those guys have a good time.
I love watching them. I mean, we always have helicopters out here at the farm, and spraying fungicides, and it's always some of my favorite farm operations of the year is watching those guys come in and the bravado they have and the abilities they have. I mean, they're so skilled, they're so brave, and they're workaholics too. I mean, those guys burn. I mean,
I think they live off of cocaine, Zen, and beer. I mean, like that's literally the only, like they work so many hours, and literally they're operating a machine flying 200 miles an hour, and they're just like, yeah, I'm gonna fly under that power line, and it's insane.
watching them come in here to the spray truck, and they're coming in every 10 minutes, and I mean, as soon as they're hot loading that thing and they're back out, it's literally within 2 minutes.
The USDA acreage report came out today. They said USDA predicts. Oh, I did want to talk about this. All right, let's open this article up real quick. Is this today? 2/19. That is today. Let me share my screen real quick. Where's my cursor? All right, USDA grains and oilseeds lookout. This is by Chris Clayton at DTN. USDA is forecasting farmers will plant 94 million acres of corn and produce a 15.76 billion bushel crop, while soybeans plantings will come in at 85 million acres and 4.45 billion bushels.
So we had 91 million in 25, but we're going to exceed that. I have trouble. I just don't believe it.
Yeah, you remember last year how like the USDA was just like magically finding land?
Yeah.
And a part of me is like, I do travel out west more than you do, and like there was a lot more corn and soy in production last year than lentil crops and things like that out west, and even Nebraska. I met a couple guys who are like, yeah, we're ripping out pasture and we're putting in corn.
Yeah.
So I do think there is some ground being gained, but in the millions.
I just have trouble believing that with the increase, like with phosphorus and urea going up, with corn already at or below the cost of production. Why in the world would we gain 3 million acres? That makes no sense.
No, especially we're losing hundreds of thousands to data centers and Amazon warehouses.
Yeah,
every
just
year.
over the last couple weeks, I've pulled back my corn acres. I'm just not going to plant as much as I was, just based upon the circumstances I hear.
Yeah, most guys in Iowa I talk to are keeping things pretty similar. Is there anything? Wheat forecast. Total wheat acres expected to decline slightly, about 300,000 acres, down to 45 million. You could attest to that. You decreased your wheat acres this year, right?
Yes, definitely.
Is this going to be every week? Not every week. We're going to do once a month. We wish we could do every week, but I live in a different state.
We could do I was thinking today, could we do a live like one in my shop and you're in your
100%. I just don't. I don't know the logistics of this, and I also don't trust you to get it set up properly.
Come on now, I can do it.
Wear your glasses, Neil.
How about we set it up and then I can just leave it set up?
Yeah, I agree with that.
You don't think I'm technological?
We're gonna do
Clayton
it.
doesn't think I'm tech savvy enough to get on and turn it on.
Neil, you've been my business partner for 3.5 years now. I've known you for about 4 years now. I can say fairly and accurately that you are not the most friendly with tech. The last time I had Neil record an iPhone vlog, I kid you not, he actually did it and he ran over his phone. I think he did it on purpose. Like, he won't admit it, but like that is the level. Like, we are afraid to ask him to record on his iPhone again because we're like, he's gonna run over his phone with a tractor again. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think
I'm not super tech savvy.
Yeah, guys, I like the idea of it. We'll talk about it, but we're gonna try to do it in March again. You'll see these clips kind of like spammed out across the YouTube channel. This is a lot of fun, and we know there's a need for it in the industry. Like, we love talking news. Neil and I talk about all this stuff on the phone, anyways. Like, it's not like this is something like literally we would have.
No,
this
is every day.
Yeah, we would have this conversation over the phone. Oh, you guys are looking at your chat right now.
No, I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate your guys' comments. I saw one guy said, "Did I annoy you with my comments?" No, I love the comments. I love to see them.
Yeah,
I like to communicate with people and like to communicate like this and get to see everybody interested in the same topics is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should have someone call in from the cattle industry next time. I want to hear some more on that. I think when we're talking about the macroeconomic climate, like, thanks for throwing that USDA report out there, because I think that's important to talk about. Did you see? I don't know if you saw this. There is a discussion going on that the economists at the USDA might be getting questioned, because a lot of them are kind of like, hey, what's going on here?
I see my buddy Lane on there. He's got one of the big DJI drones here. He's here in this county, and
Lane Foster.
Yeah, Lane Foster, and he's gonna provide an aerial service to the county. So he'll probably be at this farm sometime during 2026.
Nice. We should have him come up to Iowa to spray the wheat. Yeah. Other than that, yeah, this was fun. I mean, we could definitely keep talking, but we're at 2 hours already. Does anybody have any more questions? If you ask more questions, we'll keep going, because otherwise you're gonna have to listen to our AI outro song. we had AI today make us a little intro song, and it actually is not as bad as you'd think. But if you guys don't ask questions, you're gonna be forced to listen to that as we start cleaning up. No one. Nothing, guys. Okay. Well, welcome to Atlas Ag News.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I've got a buddy that at the church that is interested in doing some live streams to Africa, and so for training for a church over there. And I thought, well, if he could set that up at my studio, then then we could do the show more.
Do you know how much time I spent like researching all these Ag News things and writing this stuff out? Like, this was not. I spent like 4 hours this morning working on this. You know that, right?
Well, you can research it again for us, so we can talk about this again. Another.
You know, I have like a family, and we also have. Dude, it's not even planting season yet. You think I'm gonna be able to track you down on a weekly basis to sit down for 2 hours?
I'll work on it.
You always say that. All right. We're going to call that good. Let's find our little AI outro song. Let me see. I have to make a new tab here. Let's make a new back here. I don't think we're going to be able to do this. Okay. Well, then we're just going to play it on this one. And, all right. Okay. Enjoy our outro song. We're going to start cleaning up.
silos. We got the scoop on the ground through the static, making sure the truth is found. No fake news, no rust, just facts that stand tall and true.